When billionaire tech mogul Serena Vale's designer gown split from hip to knee in front of 300 of Manhattan's elite, she thought her worst nightmare had come true. But the real shock came 30 seconds later, when a weary server with calloused hands and kind eyes stepped into that hallway with a sewing kit and changed everything. This is the story of how one catastrophic wardrobe malfunction, one tired single father, and one fearless 7-year-old girl proved that the most valuable things in life can't be bought, only built. If you love stories about unexpected connections, hidden hearts, and love that crosses every boundary society tries to draw, stay with me until the very end. And don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The Venetian ballroom of the Metropolitan Plaza Hotel glittered like a jewelry box tipped on its side. Crystal chandeliers the size of compact cars hung from coffered ceilings, casting prismatic light across marble floors polished to a mirror shine. Women in couture gowns drifted past ice sculptures shaped like charging bulls and soaring eagles, symbols of ambition, power, the relentless forward motion that defined everyone in this room. Men in tuxedos that cost more than most people's monthly rent clustered in tight circles, voices low and urgent even at a charity gala, because business never really stopped for people like this. The annual Technology Innovation Foundation fundraiser drew exactly the crowd you'd expect. Venture capitalists with portfolios worth billions, startup founders who'd struck gold before 30, established tech titans whose names appeared in Forbes with numbing regularity. Tonight's cause was STEM education for underprivileged youth, which made everyone feel virtuous while they sipped 30-year-old scotch and calculated valuations on cocktail napkins. Serena Vale stood near the stage in a gown that had required 3 fittings and cost enough to fund a semester at a state university. The dress was a masterpiece of midnight blue silk that seemed to shift between navy and black, depending on how the light caught it, with a tasteful slit up one leg and an elegant sweep that brushed the floor. She'd chosen it specifically because it made her look like exactly what she was: young, successful, untouchable. At 29, Serena had already built and sold 2 companies, and her current venture, Neuralink Analytics, was valued at just over $2 billion. The tech press called her a wunderkind. Business magazines put her on covers with headlines like "The New Face of AI" and "How She Did It Before 30." Yet her LinkedIn profile read like a fever dream of achievement. Stanford at 16, first company founded at 19, first exit at 23, second at 26. She'd given TED Talks, keynoted conferences, appeared on panels where gray-haired men twice her age deferred to her expertise in machine learning and predictive algorithms. But tonight, standing in this ballroom surrounded by people who measured success in the same cold metrics she did, Serena felt the familiar weight of her own life pressing down on her shoulders. The speech she was about to give sat in her clutch purse, printed on cream cardstock, 5 minutes of carefully crafted inspiration about giving back, about responsibility, about using privilege to lift others. She'd written it herself, revised it 7 times, practiced it in her bathroom mirror until every pause and emphasis felt natural. The problem was, nothing about this life felt natural anymore. "Serena, darling." A woman in red silk materialized at her elbow, perfume arriving 3 seconds before her actual presence. Monica Hartwell, wife of a pharmaceutical CEO, patron of a dozen charities, professional socialite. "That dress is absolutely stunning. Is it Valentino?" "Custom," Serena said, manufacturing a smile. "How are you, Monica?" "Oh, exhausted, as always. We just got back from Positano. You know how international travel just drains you, but I couldn't miss tonight. The foundation does such important work." Monica's eyes did that thing they always did, skating across Serena's face without really landing, already scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. "I heard Neuralink is in talks with Amazon. Is that true?" Serena's smile didn't waver. "You know I can't discuss business deals at a charity event." Of course, of course. "Well, I'm sure whatever you're working on is brilliant." "You always land on your feet, don't you?" Monica squeezed her arm with manicured fingers and drifted away toward a cluster of hedge fund managers, leaving a vapor trail of Chanel No. 5. Serena exhaled slowly. 3 years ago, interactions like that would have thrilled her.
proof that she'd arrived, that she belonged in rooms like this. Now they just felt hollow, like going through motions in a play she'd stopped believing in. Ms. Vale? A young woman with an iPad approached, wearing the efficient smile of someone managing logistics. "We're ready for you in 5 minutes. Would you like to do a sound check?" "I'm fine," Serena said. "I've used the system here before." "Perfect. I'll come get you when it's time." The woman disappeared into the crowd, leaving Serena alone again with her thoughts and her expensive dress. She pulled out her phone, not because she needed to check anything, but because it gave her something to do with her hands. The lock screen showed her calendar for tomorrow, 6 a.m. Workout with her personal trainer, 8 a.m. meeting with her executive team, 10 a.m. call with investors, lunch meeting with a potential acquisition target, 2 p.m. with her publicist, 4 p.m. product review, dinner with a business contact who might lead to venture capital for her next expansion. Sunday looked similar. So did Monday, Tuesday. Every day stretching into a future that looked exactly like today, but with bigger numbers and higher stakes. When had her life become nothing but optimization? When had every hour become billable, every conversation transactional, every relationship a potential strategic advantage? "Excuse me, coming through?" A server slipped past her carrying a tray of champagne flutes, and Serena caught a glimpse of his profile. Tired eyes, a jaw tight with concentration, the careful posture of someone who'd been on their feet for hours and had hours still to go. He wore the same uniform as all the other servers, black pants and white shirt and black vest, but something about him stood out. Maybe it was the way he moved through the crowd like he was trying not to exist, or maybe it was the exhaustion written across his features that felt more honest than anything else in this room. Then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd of designers and diamonds. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please." The foundation's executive director, a silver-haired man named Charles Pemberton, stood at the podium tapping the microphone. "We'll be starting our program in just a few moments. Please take your seats, and we'll begin with some remarks from our keynote speaker this evening." The crowd began its slow migration toward the rows of chairs arranged in front of the stage. Serena took a breath, straightened her shoulders, and prepared to step into the spotlight. This was what she was good at. Presenting the perfect image, saying the right words, making people believe that success looked like confidence and confidence looked like happiness. She'd taken 3 steps toward the stage when she felt it. The sensation was strange at first, a slight give in the fabric along her right hip, a loosening that shouldn't have been there. Then came the sound, soft but unmistakable. The whisper of stitches surrendering, of seams coming apart under stress they weren't built to withstand. Serena froze. Her hand flew to her hip and found the split, a gap in the silk that ran from her hip down toward her knee, exposing the skin beneath. For one crystalline moment, she thought maybe it wasn't as bad as it felt. Maybe she could still walk to the stage and no one would notice. Then she took another step, and the tear widened. The sound of ripping fabric in a quiet room is surprisingly loud. It's not a dramatic crash or a shattering. It's worse because it's subtle, intimate, the kind of sound that makes people turn and look and register exactly what's happening. Serena felt the dress give way in stages, the silk parting like water, the slit that had been elegant now extending into something catastrophic. She looked down and saw a bare leg from hip to mid-thigh, saw the lining of her dress hanging loose, saw the delicate undergarments that were never meant to be visible to 300 people in evening wear. The conversations around her didn't stop, not immediately, but she felt the ripple of awareness spreading outward from where she stood, heads turning, eyes landing, mouths forming small O's of recognition and barely concealed delight, because this was the kind of moment that would be discussed for weeks, the kind of social catastrophe that reminded everyone why they were grateful not to be the center of attention. "Oh my God," someone whispered, a woman's voice dripping with false concern and real pleasure. "Is that Serena Vale? What happened to her dress? Did it just rip? In front of everyone?" Serena's face burned. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack them. This was it. The nightmare scenario she'd never quite articulated even to herself. Not failure in business, not a bad investment or a failed product launch. Those things she could control, could strategize around, could spin into learning experiences. But this? This was pure, uncontrollable humiliation, her body betraying her in the most public possible way. She wanted to disappear, wanted the marble floor to open up and swallow her whole, wanted to close her eyes and rewind 10 seconds, 5 seconds, any amount of time that would let her step differently, turn differently, exist differently. Instead, she clutched at the torn fabric with both hands and started walking, not toward the stage where Charles Pemberton was now staring at her with obvious concern, but toward the nearest exit. The crowd parted for her like she was radioactive. She felt their eyes tracking her movement, heard the whispers gaining volume and velocity, becoming the story that would live forever in the ecosystem of society gossip. Poor thing. That's mortifying. I heard those custom dresses cost $50,000. Well, clearly not well made. Did you see her face? She looked like she was going to cry. Serena pushed through a side door into a hallway that ran parallel to the ballroom. The noise of the gala muted immediately, replaced by the hum of air conditioning and the distant clatter of kitchen work. Emergency exit signs glowed red at either end of the corridor. The walls were plain here, none of the ornamental molding or artwork that decorated the public spaces. This was where staff moved between the front of house and the back, where the machinery of hospitality ran on grease and hustle. She stumbled to a halt halfway down the hall, her hand still clutching the torn dress, her breathing ragged. The silk felt like it was still ripping even though she'd stopped moving, like the damage was spreading under its own momentum. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes, fighting the burn of tears she absolutely refused to let fall. "Excuse me." Serena's eyes snapped open. The server from earlier stood a few feet away, the one with tired eyes and careful posture. Up close, she could see more details. Dark hair slightly too long, like he'd been meaning to get it cut for weeks but hadn't found time. A jaw shadowed with stubble that said he'd shaved this morning, but the evening shift had erased his efforts. Hands that looked strong despite the exhaustion radiating off him, fingers that weren't soft like the venture capitalists and tech executives inside that ballroom. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I'll move. I know staff needs to use this hall." "That's not—" He stopped, seeming to recalibrate. "I saw what happened in there. With your dress." Fresh humiliation flooded through her. Of course he'd seen. Everyone had seen. That was the whole point of a scene like that. It existed to be witnessed, to be talked about, to become a story strangers told each other about the dangers of pride and expensive clothing. "I'm fine," Serena said, even though fine was the last thing she was. The server's expression didn't change. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out something small, a compact black case, the kind that might hold business cards. He opened it to reveal a needle, several colors of thread, small scissors, safety pins. "I can fix it," he said simply. Serena stared at the sewing kit like it was a grenade. "What?" "Your dress. I can sew it back together. It won't be perfect, but it'll hold long enough for you to get through whatever you need to do in there." He gestured toward the ballroom with his chin. "You're a server," Serena said, then immediately regretted how it sounded, like she was questioning his credentials, his competence, his right to exist in her orbit. But the words were already out, hanging in the air between them. "I'm also a father," he said, with the patience of someone who'd explained this before. "And kids rip clothes constantly. You learn to fix things or you go broke buying new ones every week." Something about his tone cut through Serena's panic. He wasn't offering out of pity or awkwardness or because he wanted something from her. He was offering because he had a skill and she had a problem, and solving problems was apparently just what he did. "I don't—" she started, then stopped. What was she going to say? That she didn't need help? That was obviously a lie. That she could handle this herself? With what supplies exactly? She hadn't brought anything to this gala except her phone, her speech, and a credit card that wouldn't help her one bit right now. "Look," the server said, "I know you don't know me, and you have zero reason to trust me. But I promise I'm not trying to pull anything. I have about 6 minutes left on my break, you need help, and I have the tools. That's all this is." Serena looked at him, really looked at him, saw the dark circles under his eyes that spoke of too many long shifts and not enough sleep, saw the way he held himself, straight-backed, despite obvious exhaustion, saw something in his expression that she hadn't encountered in so long she'd almost forgotten it existed. Straightforward kindness with no agenda attached. Okay, she heard herself say. Yes. Thank you.
He nodded once, quick and efficient, then gestured to a door a few feet down the hall. Supply closet. It'll be more private than standing out here where anyone could walk by. They moved to the closet, which turned out to be larger than expected, stocked with spare linens and cleaning supplies, with enough room for both of them without crowding. The server propped the door open with a box of paper towels, letting hallway light spill in while maintaining a clear line of sight to anyone passing by. A simple gesture, but one that acknowledged the strangeness of the situation, the potential awkwardness, the need for propriety even in crisis. "I'm Caleb, by the way," he said, kneeling down to examine the torn seam. "Caleb Turner." Serena Vale. The name felt strange in her mouth without the qualifiers. No CEO, no founder, just her name like she was a person instead of a brand. "I know," Caleb said without looking up. "Saw your face on the program. You're tonight's speaker." Was tonight's speaker, Serena corrected, watching as he threaded a needle with dark blue thread that nearly matched her dress. "I'm pretty sure they've moved on to Plan B by now." "Maybe. Or maybe you get in there and make the speech anyway." He glanced up at her, just for a second. "Seems like a waste to let a wardrobe malfunction erase whatever you came here to say." He had no idea what he was asking. Walking back into that room after what had just happened, facing all those eyes, all that judgment, all those people who'd watched her fall apart, it felt impossible. Caleb's hands moved with surprising speed and precision, gathering the torn edges of the silk, aligning them carefully. "This is going to take a few minutes. You might want to hold still." Serena pressed her back against the wall, acutely aware of how bizarre the situation was. An hour ago, she'd been preparing to address a ballroom full of influential people. Now she stood in a supply closet while a stranger sewed her dress back together. If someone had described this scenario to her yesterday, she would have laughed at the absurdity. "How long have you worked here?" she asked, because the silence felt too heavy, and watching him work made her uncomfortable in ways she couldn't quite name. "At the Metropolitan? 3 years." His hands kept moving, needles sliding through fabric with practiced ease. "I work events mostly. Weddings, galas, corporate parties. Pays better than restaurant shifts." "Do you enjoy it?" Caleb's mouth quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. "It pays my rent and feeds my kid. Enjoyment is sort of a luxury." The words landed harder than he probably meant them to. Serena thought about her own relationship with work, the way she'd built her entire identity around achievement, around success measured in funding rounds and market share and Forbes lists. When was the last time she'd done something just because she enjoyed it? When was the last time she'd had that option? "Your daughter," Serena said, remembering what he'd mentioned earlier. "How old is she?" 7, Mia. Something softened in his voice when he said the name, a tenderness that transformed his whole face for just a moment. "She's the reason I'm good at this. Kids and dress-up games, you know? Last month she decided her stuffed elephant needed a ball gown made out of my old t-shirts. I spent 2 hours figuring out how to make it work." Despite everything, the humiliation, the anxiety, the surreal strangeness of this moment, Serena felt herself smile. "Did it work?" Mr. Peanuts looked fabulous. Caleb's expression carried genuine pride. "She wore him to school for show and tell, told everyone her dad was a fashion designer." "That's adorable." "That's Mia. She's got this way of turning everything into magic. I've got no idea where she gets it from, but I'm grateful for it every day." He finished one section of stitching and moved to another part of the tear, his movements efficient but never rushed. "What about you? Any kids?" "No," Serena said, the word coming out sharper than she intended. Then, softer. "No time for that kind of thing." Caleb glanced up at her again, and this time his gaze held for an extra second. Not judgment, exactly, but something like curiosity. "Everyone's got time for the things they prioritize." "Is that a criticism?" "No, just an observation." He returned his attention to the dress. "I'm not in a position to criticize anyone's life choices. I'm literally sewing a stranger's dress in a closet during my break." "You didn't have to do this," Serena said quietly. "I know." He tied off a stitch, snipped the thread with small scissors. "But you looked like you needed help, and I could help, so here we are." The simplicity of it stunned her. In Serena's world, every action came with calculations, cost-benefit analysis, strategic positioning, relationship capital. People helped because they wanted something in return, because it served their interests, because networking and reciprocity were the currencies that mattered. But Caleb Turner had stepped into this hallway, pulled out a sewing kit, and offered assistance with apparently zero expectation of reward. "You're very good at this," she said, watching his hands work. "The sewing, I mean. Practice. Also YouTube tutorials. You can learn pretty much anything these days if you're willing to watch enough videos." He smiled slightly. "Mia keeps me on my toes. Last week she came home from school convinced she needed to learn origami. We spent Saturday folding paper cranes until my fingers cramped." "Sounds exhausting." "It is." Caleb's expression softened again, that same transformation that made him look younger, less worn down. "It's also the best part of my life. Everything else is just—" He paused, searching for words. "Just keeping the wheels turning, you know? Making sure the bills get paid, food gets bought, clothes get cleaned. But Mia, she's what makes all the wheel turning matter." Serena found herself wondering what that felt like. Not the responsibility. She understood responsibility, lived under its weight every day. But the joy in it, the sense of purpose that didn't come from metrics or achievements, but from something simpler and somehow more substantial. She'd built companies, managed hundreds of employees, made decisions that affected thousands of people's lives. But she'd never experienced what Caleb described, this elemental sense that another person was the reason everything else made sense. "There," Caleb said, sitting back on his heels. "It's not going to win any sewing competitions, but it should hold. Just don't make any sudden movements or dance too energetically." Serena looked down at the repair. He was right. It wasn't invisible. If someone looked closely, they'd see the stitches, slightly uneven but functional, holding the torn edges together. But from any reasonable distance, the dress looked intact, wearable, salvageable. "Thank you," she said, and meant it with an intensity that surprised her. "I don't know how to— What do I owe you?" Caleb stood, brushing lint off his vest. "Nothing. You don't owe me anything. But it's fine, really. I helped because I could, not because I expected payment." He tucked the sewing kit back into his pocket. "You should probably get back in there before they completely rewrite the program." He was right, but the thought of walking back into that ballroom still made her stomach clench. All those people who'd seen her fall apart, all those whispers that had probably metastasized into full narratives by now, stories about Serena Vale's spectacular public humiliation, cautionary tales about pride and expensive clothing. "Hey," Caleb said, and his voice carried an unexpected gentleness. "For what it's worth, the dress thing was just bad luck. Could have happened to anyone. But if you walk back in there and give that speech like nothing happened, that's going to be the story people remember, not the rip, your recovery." Serena met his eyes. They were kind, those eyes. Tired, but kind. And right now she needed kindness more than she needed strategy or advice or anything else her usual world could offer. "Thank you," she said again. "Really, you have no idea what this means." "Good luck with your speech." Caleb stepped out of the supply closet, already shifting back into his professional server mode, posture straightening, expression smoothing into neutral efficiency. He gave her one last small smile, then disappeared down the hallway toward the kitchen, leaving Serena alone with her repaired dress and her racing heart. She took a breath, then another. Then she pulled out her phone and checked the time. 7 minutes had passed since she'd fled the ballroom. 7 minutes that felt like 7 hours, that had somehow contained a small earthquake in the architecture of her life. She'd walked into this hallway thinking the evening was ruined. Now, standing here with a stranger's careful stitches holding her dress together, she felt something unexpected kindling in her chest. Not quite hope, she wasn't that far gone yet, but something adjacent to it. Possibility, maybe. The sense that disaster didn't have to be final, that recovery was an option if you could find the right help at the right moment. Serena smoothed down her dress, squared her shoulders, and started walking back toward the ballroom. The hallway seemed shorter this time, less like a gauntlet. She could hear voices through the door, Charles Pemberton's smooth baritone, probably stalling for time, keeping the crowd engaged while they figured out what to do about their missing speaker. She pushed open the door. The ballroom had settled into a collective murmur, conversations humming beneath Charles's attempts to maintain order. Heads turned as she entered. She saw recognition ripple through the crowd. There she is, the woman who ran away, the tech mogul with the torn dress. People were already forming opinions, already slotting this moment into their understanding of who she was and what she represented. But Serena didn't run this time. She walked straight down the center aisle, her head high, her spine straight, feeling each step through Caleb's careful stitches. They held. The dress held. She held. Charles saw her coming and relief flooded his features. He leaned away from the microphone as she climbed the 3 steps to the stage.
"Are you sure you're okay?" he whispered. "I'm sure," Serena said, and realized she meant it. She stepped up to the podium. 300 faces stared back at her, some curious, some sympathetic, some still carrying traces of that earlier schadenfreude. She could feel them waiting to see how she'd handle this, whether she'd acknowledge the elephant in the room or pretend it had never happened. Serena pulled her speech notes from her clutch, then set them aside. Whatever she'd written earlier, whatever carefully crafted message she'd prepared, it felt wrong now, inadequate. This moment required something different, something more honest. "Good evening," she began, and her voice came out steadier than she'd expected. "I'm Serena Vale, and about 10 minutes ago, I had what I think we can all agree was a pretty spectacular wardrobe malfunction." A ripple of laughter ran through the crowd. Not cruel laughter, genuinely amused, almost relieved, like she'd given them permission to acknowledge the obvious. "I could pretend it didn't happen," Serena continued. "I could read you the speech I prepared about innovation and responsibility and giving back to communities, and maybe I'll still hit some of those points. But first, I want to tell you about something that just happened that I think matters more than anything I'd planned to say." She gripped the edges of the podium. "When my dress tore, I ran. I was humiliated and scared, and I just wanted to disappear. But in that hallway, someone helped me. Someone with absolutely no reason to care about my problem. Someone who gains nothing from my success or failure. Someone who was on his break after hours of work and chose to spend 6 minutes of that break sewing my dress back together." Serena paused, letting that sink in. We talk a lot in tech about disruption and innovation and changing the world. But you know what changed my world tonight? Simple, uncomplicated kindness from someone who saw a problem he could solve and just solved it. No networking, no favors asked, no strategic positioning, just help, freely given. She could see faces in the crowd shifting, people leaning forward slightly, the cynical glaze in some eyes starting to crack. "I came here tonight to talk about our responsibility as successful people to lift others up," Serena said. "But I almost missed the most important part of that message. We don't lift people up through grand gestures or check writing, though those things matter too. We lift people up by seeing them, by recognizing that the server bringing your champagne might be the most capable person in this room when it comes to the skills that actually matter for human connection, by understanding that dignity and competence aren't determined by net worth or job title." She thought about Caleb in that supply closet, his tired eyes and steady hands, the way he'd spoken about his daughter with such transparent love. "The person who helped me tonight? He's a single father working multiple shifts to provide for his kid. He learns origami on Saturdays and sews ball gowns for stuffed elephants, and somehow still has energy left over to help a stranger in a hallway. And I realize standing here that I've built an entire life around being impressive and successful, and I'm not sure I've ever done anything as genuinely valuable as what he did in those 6 minutes." The ballroom had gone very quiet. Serena could see Monica Hartwell in the 3rd row, her expression complex, part surprise, part recognition, part something that might have been respect. "So, here's what I want to say tonight," Serena continued. "Innovation matters. Business matters. The work we do in technology can genuinely change lives for the better, but none of it means anything if we forget the human element. If we forget that our assistants and servers and janitors and everyone else we barely see as we rush through our important days, they're not supporting characters in our stories. They're the main characters of their own stories, and those stories are just as valuable as ours." She picked up her prepared notes, glanced at them, then set them down again.
I was going to tell you about Neuralink's new education initiative. We're partnering with public schools in underserved communities to provide AI literacy programs and coding boot camps. It's a $15 million commitment over 3 years, and that's important work that I'm proud of. But I'm prouder of the fact that I got help tonight from someone who had no reason to help me except basic human decency. And I want to build a world where that kind of kindness isn't remarkable, it's normal, where we measure success not just by how much we achieve, but by how much we see and support and lift up the people around us at every level. Serena took a breath. The foundation does incredible work providing STEM education to kids who might not otherwise have access to it. Please donate generously tonight. Help us build pipelines and opportunities for young people who have the talent, but not the resources. And then tomorrow, when you're back in your offices and boardrooms, maybe take a moment to actually see the people who keep your world running. Learn their names, acknowledge their competence, recognize their humanity. Because here's what I learned tonight. The most sophisticated algorithm in the world can't replicate what one person with a sewing kit and genuine compassion can do in 6 minutes. And maybe that's the lesson all of us in tech most need to learn. She stepped back from the podium. For a moment, nothing happened. Then someone started clapping, a single pair of hands somewhere in the middle of the room, then another. Then the applause built like a wave, rolling through the ballroom until all 300 people were on their feet. Serena stood on that stage and felt something cracking open inside her chest. Not relief exactly, though there was that. Not triumph, though she'd clearly stuck the landing on a speech that could have gone disastrously wrong. What she felt was something more fundamental, a shift in perspective that made everything she'd thought she knew about success suddenly look different. Charles appeared at her elbow, beaming. "That was incredible," he said as she descended the stage. "Powerful and authentic and exactly what this crowd needed to hear." "Thank you," Serena said automatically, but her mind was already elsewhere. She moved through the post-speech chaos, people wanting to shake her hand, donors pledging money, business contacts asking for meetings. With the efficiency of long practice, she smiled and nodded and promised to follow up, but the whole time she was scanning the room for one person. She found him 20 minutes later near the service entrance, standing with 3 other servers as they compared notes about table assignments. Caleb looked even more tired than before, the kind of exhaustion that settles into bones, but he was listening intently to something a younger server was saying, nodding thoughtfully. Serena approached, suddenly nervous in a way she hadn't been nervous in years. "Excuse me." Caleb turned and his eyes widened slightly when he saw her. "Oh, hey, how'd the speech go?" "Good, actually, thanks to you." She felt acutely aware of the other servers watching this interaction, trying to figure out what was happening. "Do you have a minute?" Something flickered across Caleb's face, caution maybe, or confusion, but he nodded. "Sure. My shift ends in 10 minutes anyway." They walked a short distance away from the service entrance, finding a relatively quiet corner near the coat check. The ballroom noise was muted here, reduced to a pleasant hum. "I wanted to thank you again," Serena said, "for helping me earlier. You saved me from what could have been the worst night of my life." "I sewed a dress," Caleb said with a slight smile. "Let's not oversell it." "You did more than that." Serena struggled to find words that didn't sound completely ridiculous. "You reminded me that people can just be kind, without wanting anything. I realize how depressing it is that I needed that reminder, but I did." Caleb's expression softened. "You're welcome. Really. I'm glad it worked out." "I mentioned you in my speech." Serena saw surprise flash across his face. "Not by name," she added quickly, "but I told everyone what you did, about the sewing kit and the 6 minutes and just helping." "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to. It mattered to me. You mattered." She stopped, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "What you did mattered to me." They stood there for a moment, and Serena became aware of how strange this must look to anyone watching. The keynote speaker cornering a server after her speech, both of them standing too close, talking too intently. "Can I ask you something?" Caleb said. "Of course." "Why are you still here?" His tone was gentle, curious rather than accusatory. "I mean, you gave your speech, did your thing. You could have left an hour ago, but you've been walking around schmoozing with donors and shaking hands like you're running for office." Serena blinked. That's what you do at these events."
But do you want to be doing it? The question landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. Did she want to be here? When was the last time she'd asked herself that? When was the last time want had factored into any of her decisions? I don't know, she admitted. I'm good at it. It's expected. And there's always someone else to talk to, another connection to make. Sounds exhausting. It is. The honesty surprised her, but it's also just what my life is. Has been for years. Caleb studied her face for a long moment. You want to know what Mia asked me last week? She said, Daddy, when you dream about stuff, do you dream about real things or magic things? And I told her I mostly dream about magic things, flying and superheroes and living in castles. And she said that was good because real thing dreams are boring. Smart kid. She is, but it made me think about how much time I spend just trying to keep up with reality. Bills and shifts and making sure she gets to school on time and has clean clothes and eats vegetables occasionally. I stopped dreaming about magic things years ago. He paused. But then sometimes something happens, like tonight, meeting you, and I remember that there's still magic in the world, just maybe not where I thought I'd find it. Serena's heart did something complicated in her chest. Where did you think you'd find magic? I don't know, but not at a society gala while I'm on my break. Caleb smiled, and this time it reached his eyes fully. Life's weird like that sometimes. Yeah, Serena agreed softly. It really is. Someone called Caleb's name from across the hall, another server gesturing impatiently. He glanced over, then back at Serena. I should go. We're doing final cleanup. Right, of course. She didn't want him to go, which was absurd. She barely knew this person. They'd spent maybe 15 minutes together total, but something about his presence made her feel more grounded than she'd felt in months, maybe years. It was really nice meeting you, Caleb said.
And I'm glad your speech went well. You deserved that after the dress thing. Wait, Serena said before she could stop herself. This is going to sound crazy, but could I buy you coffee sometime to thank you properly? Caleb's eyebrows rose. You really don't need to do that. I know I don't need to. I want to. She pulled out her phone, suddenly desperate. Please, one coffee. If it's weird or awkward, we never have to see each other again. But I'd like to talk to you more. Learn about Mia and the origami and what it's like to have magic thing dreams. For a long moment, Caleb just looked at her. Serena could see him thinking, weighing, trying to figure out if this was real or some kind of elaborate power play he didn't understand. She wanted to tell him it was neither. It was just a moment of connection she didn't want to lose, an unexpected conversation she wanted to continue. Okay, he finally said. Coffee. But I'm buying my own, and you're not allowed to turn it into some kind of networking thing. Deal. Serena opened her contacts. Give me your number. I'll text you, and we'll figure out a time. He recited his number, and she typed it in, then sent a quick text. This is Serena, the dress survivor. Caleb's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and smiled. The dress survivor. I like that. Better than billionaire tech CEO, right? Much better. He pocketed his phone. I really do have to go now, but I'll wait for your text about coffee. Soon, Serena promised. I'll reach out soon. She watched him walk back toward his coworkers, his posture already shifting back into work mode. One of the other servers said something that made him laugh, and the sound carried across the space between them, genuine and unguarded, and completely at odds with the careful, curated laughter Serena was used to hearing in her world. She turned and made her way back toward the ballroom, but everything looked different now. The chandelier light that had seemed so cold before now felt warmer. The conversations around her still sounded mostly hollow, but she could see past them to the people underneath. Complicated humans with their own struggles and dreams and moments of grace. Monica Hartwell intercepted her near the bar. Serena, darling, that speech was absolutely moving. I had no idea you had such depth. A week ago, that comment would have rolled off her back. Tonight, it stung. The implication that depth was unexpected, that the version of herself she presented to the world was all surface and no substance. But maybe Monica was right. Maybe Serena had become exactly what she projected, successful and polished,
and increasingly hollow. Maybe she'd been so busy achieving that she'd forgotten to be. "Thank you," she said, because engaging with Monica's casual condescension would take more energy than she had. "It's been a long night. I think I'm going to head out." Of course. We should do lunch soon. I'd love to hear more about that education initiative." "I'll have my assistant reach out," Serena said, already moving away, knowing that lunch would never happen and that Monica didn't actually care. She collected her coat from coat check, tipped the attendant generously, and stepped out into the November night. The air was cold and sharp, carrying the smell of car exhaust and distant rain. Manhattan glittered around her, lights and steel and ambition rising toward a sky she couldn't see through the light pollution. Serena stood on the steps of the Metropolitan Plaza Hotel and pulled out her phone. Caleb's number glowed on her screen. She typed a message, then deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. What did you say to someone who'd shown you kindness without agenda? How did you navigate a connection that felt important without understanding why? Finally, she settled on simple. "Thank you again for tonight. Looking forward to that coffee. S." The message went through with a soft whoosh. Serena pocketed her phone and started walking toward where her car was waiting. Behind her, the gala continued, the music and conversation and clinking glasses, all the machinery of high society grinding forward. But she was already outside it, already moving toward something else, a torn dress and a quiet repair. That's what tonight had been, she realized. And maybe that's what she needed, not another funding round or product launch or Forbes cover. Just someone willing to sit down with a needle and thread and carefully stitch together the torn places. Someone who saw the damage and didn't run away but said simply, "Let me help you." Her phone buzzed. Caleb's reply. "Looking forward to it too. And for the record, you did great tonight. The real you is better than the polished version." Serena stopped walking and read those words 3 times. The real you is better than the polished version. When was the last time someone had seen past the polish? When was the last time she'd let them? She climbed into the back of her town car and gave the driver her address. As the city slid past her window, all those lives stacked on top of each other, all those stories intersecting and diverging, she thought about Mia asking her father about dreams, about real thing dreams and magic thing dreams, and how somewhere along the way, Serena had stopped dreaming at all. Maybe it was time to start again. Maybe that's what happened when someone showed up in a hallway with a sewing kit and no expectations. They reminded you that repair was possible, that torn things could be made whole, that the stitches might show, but showing was okay. Better than okay. Maybe. Better than pretending you'd never needed mending in the first place. The car pulled up to her building, a high-rise in Tribeca with views of the Hudson and security so tight you needed 3 forms of ID to reach the elevator. Serena thanked her driver, rode the elevator to the 23rd floor, and let herself into an apartment that cost more per month than most people made in a year. It was beautiful in that carefully curated way, minimalist furniture, original art on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows that turned Manhattan into her personal light show. Everything in its place, everything designed for maximum aesthetic impact with minimum personal attachment. She'd never felt lonelier in her life. Serena took off the midnight blue dress, the one that had torn and been repaired, that now carried small, careful stitches like scars from a battle survived. She hung it carefully in her closet, running her fingers over Caleb's work. The stitches were uneven, honest, human. They told a story that the original perfect seams never could. She changed into pajamas, made chamomile tea she didn't really want, and sat by her window looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Caleb was probably heading home to his daughter. Maybe they'd talk about their days. Maybe Mia would show him new drawings or ask for help with homework or demand another origami session. Maybe he'd tuck her in and read her a story about magic things, then collapse into his own bed so exhausted he couldn't think straight. It sounded like the best life Serena could imagine. Her phone sat on the coffee table, silent except for the usual influx of work emails and meeting requests and messages from people who wanted things from her. But nestled among them was Caleb's text, proof that tonight had actually happened, that she hadn't imagined the whole thing. The real you is better than the polished version. Serena picked up her phone and saved his number with 2 words. Caleb Real. Because that's what he was. Real in a way nothing else in her life felt real anymore.
And maybe that's what she needed to find her way back to herself. Someone who didn't care about her net worth or her achievements or the careful image she'd constructed over years of strategic self-presentation. Someone who just saw a person with a torn dress and thought, I can fix that. Tomorrow she'd go back to being Serena Vale, tech mogul, CEO, thought leader. She'd sit in meetings and make decisions and move numbers around until they looked the way investors wanted them to look. She'd be successful and driven and exactly what everyone expected. But tonight, just for tonight, she let herself be the dress survivor, the woman who'd run away and been helped, the person who'd forgotten how to dream about magic things and met someone who reminded her it was possible. Outside her window, the city hummed its endless song, and somewhere in that vast grid of concrete and steel and ambition, a tired server went home to his daughter, carrying with him a phone number and a maybe, a small seed of possibility planted in the fertile ground of unexpected kindness. The torn dress hung in Serena's closet, its careful stitches holding. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Serena thought maybe she could hold too. The text came 3 days later on a Tuesday morning when Serena was in back-to-back meetings about Q4 projections and the upcoming product launch. Her phone buzzed during a presentation about user acquisition costs, and she glanced down to see Caleb's name on her screen. Coffee this weekend? Sunday afternoon is the only time I have free. Fair warning, it comes with a 7-year-old chaperone. Mia doesn't have school, and my usual sitter is out of town. Completely understand if that's a deal breaker. Serena stared at the message while her CFO droned on about conversion rates and customer lifetime value. A week ago, she would have said yes to coffee, but no to the child. Too complicated, too much potential awkwardness, too far outside her comfort zone. But something had shifted that night in the hallway. Some calculus had changed in ways she was still trying to understand. She typed back, Sunday works. Where should I meet you? The response came quickly. Riverside Park, 72nd Street entrance, 2 p.m. We usually do the playground and then get hot chocolate. Very glamorous, I know. Serena smiled despite herself. Sounds perfect. See you then. Her assistant Jennifer materialized at her elbow with an iPad full of scheduling conflicts. You have the investors' dinner Sunday evening. Should I confirm? Cancel it, Serena said, surprising herself. Tell them something came up. Jennifer's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. Serena Vale didn't cancel on investors. She rescheduled continents if necessary, but she didn't cancel. Are you sure? I'm sure. Please send my apologies and suggest we reconvene next week. As Jennifer retreated, looking vaguely concerned, Serena turned her attention back to the meeting. But her mind kept drifting to Sunday, to a park and a playground and a 7-year-old she'd never met. What did you wear to something like that? What did you talk about? How did you interact with someone else's child when your entire life had been structured to avoid exactly that kind of messy, unpredictable human connection? By Friday, Serena had changed her outfit 4 times. She stood in her bedroom surrounded by discarded options. Too formal, too casual, too obviously expensive, too much like she was trying too hard. Finally, she settled on dark jeans, ankle boots, a cream sweater, and a navy jacket that looked effortless even though it had cost $800. She pulled her hair into a ponytail and skipped the makeup beyond mascara and lip balm. The woman in the mirror looked younger than usual, more uncertain, almost nervous. You're being ridiculous, she told her reflection. It's coffee with someone you barely know and his kid. Not a business deal, not a life-changing moment, just coffee. But her reflection didn't look convinced. Sunday arrived cold and bright, November sun cutting through bare tree branches as Serena made her way uptown. She'd dismissed her driver for the afternoon and taken the subway instead, a small rebellion against her usual insulation from the city. The train was crowded with weekend travelers, families heading to museums, couples with shopping bags, teenagers in clusters laughing at something on someone's phone. Normal life, Serena thought. This is what normal life looks like. She emerged at 72nd Street and walked toward the park entrance Caleb had mentioned. Riverside Park stretched along the Hudson River, a ribbon of green space where joggers and dog walkers and families coexisted in the complicated choreography of shared public space. The trees were mostly bare now, their branches sketching patterns against the sky, but the afternoon light made everything look softer,
gentler. Caleb stood near a bench, easy to spot in a gray hoodie and jeans, his hands shoved in his pockets. Next to him, a small figure in purple leggings and a pink jacket that seemed 3 sizes too big, bounced on her toes with the barely contained energy that only 7-year-olds possess. Her dark hair was pulled into 2 ponytails that bobbed as she moved, and even from 30 feet away, Serena could see the bright curiosity in her eyes. "Hey," Caleb said as Serena approached. His smile was warm, but carried a hint of nervousness that matched her own. "You made it. Serena, this is my daughter, Mia. Mia, this is my friend Serena." Friend. The word hung in the air between them, simple and complicated at once. Mia tilted her head back to look up at Serena, studying her with the unabashed directness of childhood. "You're really tall." "Mia," Caleb said with practiced patience, "what do we say about commenting on people's appearance? That everyone looks different and that's okay?" Mia recited dutifully, then grinned. "But she is tall, Daddy. That's not mean. That's just true." Despite herself, Serena laughed. "She's right. I am tall. 5'9" and bare feet, and I wear heels a lot for work, so I'm used to being the tallest person in most rooms." "What kind of work do you do?" Mia asked. Caleb shot Serena an apologetic look. "Sorry, she's in an asking questions about everything phase." "It's fine," Serena said, crouching down so she was closer to Mia's eye level. "I work with computers. I help companies figure out how to use technology to solve problems. Like a superhero, but with computers?" "Kinda like that, yeah." Mia considered this, her expression serious. "My daddy works really hard too. He brings food to people and cleans up after them, and sometimes he comes home so tired he falls asleep on the couch before dinner." "Mia," Caleb said, his voice tight with embarrassment. But Serena just smiled. "That does sound like really hard work. Your dad must be very strong." "He is." Mia's face lit up. "He can carry me even when I'm being super heavy on purpose. And he fixes everything that breaks. And he makes really good pancakes on Saturdays." She paused. "Sometimes they're burned, but I eat them anyway because I don't want him to feel bad." "You're a good daughter," Serena said softly. "I know." Mia grabbed Serena's hand with the casual confidence of someone who'd never learned that strangers were supposed to maintain distance. "Come on, I want to show you the good swings. Some of them are too little kid, but there's one that goes really, really high." Before Serena could respond, she was being towed across the grass toward the playground, Caleb trailing behind them with an expression caught between amusement and mortification. "Sorry," he called. "She's not usually this forward with new people. I think she's decided you're safe." "How does she decide that?" Serena asked, struggling to keep up with Mia's determined march. "No idea. Kid instinct, maybe. She's got pretty good radar for people." The playground was exactly what you'd expect in a well-maintained New York park. Colorful equipment, rubber safety surfacing, parents scattered on benches looking at their phones while keeping one eye on their children. Mia dragged Serena to a swing set and pointed imperiously at the seat. "You have to try it. It's the best one." "I haven't been on a swing in probably 20 years, Serena said. "Then you really need to try it." Mia's logic was unassailable. Serena glanced at Caleb, who shrugged. "Fair warning, once Mia decides something is important, she's relentless." "I can see where she gets it," Serena said, thinking of how Caleb had insisted on helping her despite her initial protests. She sat down on the swing, gripping the chains. The metal was cold through her jacket. "Okay, now what?" "Now you swing." Mia climbed onto the swing next to her and immediately started pumping her legs, gaining height with each arc. "You have to lean back and kick your legs out and then pull them in, like this." Serena tried to follow Mia's instructions, feeling absurdly self-conscious. When was the last time she'd done something this simple, this purposeless? She couldn't remember. Her days were scheduled in 15-minute increments, every action serving some strategic goal. But swinging on a playground? That served nothing except the pure physical pleasure of movement, of momentum, of letting gravity and force carry you up and back, up and back. "You're doing it," Mia shouted, her ponytail streaming behind her. "Go higher!" So Serena went higher. She leaned back and kicked and pulled, and suddenly she was soaring, the world tilting and riding with each swing.
The cold air stung her cheeks and made her eyes water. Her stomach did that flip-flop thing she remembered from childhood, and something loosened in her chest, some knot of tension she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten it was there. From his position near the swings, Caleb watched them with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not surprise exactly, but something like it. Recognition maybe, or relief. After 10 minutes, Mia declared the swings conquered and moved on to the climbing structure, scaling it with the fearless efficiency of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Serena dismounted more carefully, her legs slightly shaky, and walked over to where Caleb stood. "She's amazing," Serena said. "She's a force of nature," Caleb agreed. "Thanks for being a good sport about all this. I know it's probably not what you imagined when I suggested coffee." "It's better," Serena said, and meant it. "More real. More chaotic, you mean?" "That too." She watched Mia hang upside down from a bar, her jacket riding up to expose her stomach, her face turning pink with exertion. "Does she always have this much energy?" "Always. Sometimes I think she runs on some kind of perpetual motion machine. Meanwhile, I'm exhausted by 8 p.m. and she's still bouncing off walls." Caleb's voice carried equal parts exhaustion and love. "Her mom used to say Mia was revenge for all the trouble I caused as a kid." It was the first time he'd mentioned Mia's mother. Serena wanted to ask, wanted to understand the shape of Caleb's life, the spaces where pain lived alongside joy, but something in his expression suggested now wasn't the time. "Look, Daddy, I'm a monkey." Mia swung from bar to bar, her movements sure and quick. "I see you. Very impressive," Caleb called back, then quieter to Serena. "She's been working on that for weeks. Last month she could barely reach the bars." "How do you do it?" The question escaped before Serena could stop it. The single parent thing, working multiple jobs and still showing up for her like this. Caleb was quiet for a moment, watching his daughter play. "You just do. There's no other option, you know. She needs me, so I figure it out. Some days I figure it out better than others." He turned to look at Serena. "I'm guessing you don't have kids?" "No, never seemed like the right time, and then suddenly I was 29 and had built a life that doesn't really have room for that kind of thing." "Do you want them? Kids, I mean." Serena considered the question, really considered it instead of giving the automatic response she usually offered at business dinners when the topic came up. "I don't know. A week ago I would have said no without thinking, but watching Mia, watching how you are with her, it makes me wonder what I've been optimizing my life for exactly." "Daddy, Serena, come see!" Mia had abandoned the climbing structure and was now crouched near a tree, examining something on the ground with intense focus. They walked over to find her studying a line of ants carrying crumbs toward a hole in the tree's roots. Her expression was pure concentration, her commentary a steady stream of observations. "Look how they all know where to go. Do you think they have a boss ant telling them what to do? And look, that one is carrying something really big. It's like if I tried to carry our whole couch. That ant is super strong." Serena knelt down beside her, ignoring the damp ground seeping through her expensive jeans. They communicate through chemicals called pheromones. Each ant leaves a trail that the others can follow. "Like breadcrumbs." Mia looked delighted. "They're making a map for their friends." "Exactly like that." "Are you a scientist?" Mia asked. "Not exactly, but I use a lot of science in my work." "That's so cool." Mia watched the ants for another minute, then stood up abruptly, her attention already shifting. "I'm hungry. Can we get hot chocolate now?" Caleb checked his watch. "Sure. There's a cart near the fountain that makes pretty good hot chocolate." They walked through the park, Mia running ahead, and then circling back like a planet in erratic orbit around her father. Other families passed them, some giving Serena curious looks, probably wondering about her relationship to Caleb and Mia. She wondered the same thing. What was this? A date that wasn't a date? A thank you that had evolved into something stranger and more tentative. The cart vendor recognized Caleb and Mia immediately. "The usual?" he asked with a broad smile. "Please," Caleb said, "and one more." He glanced at Serena. "You want whipped cream?" "Why not?" Serena said, feeling reckless. They found a bench overlooking the Hudson. The river moved past in its endless flow, carrying light on its surface like scattered coins. Boats cut white wakes through the gray water. Across the river, New Jersey rose in layers of buildings and bridges, and the eternal human project of transforming landscape into cityscape. Mia positioned herself between Serena and Caleb, her hot chocolate clutched in both hands, a whipped cream mustache forming above her upper lip. "This is the best part of Sundays," she announced. "Playground and hot chocolate, and Daddy doesn't have to work." "What do you usually do on Sundays when you're not at the park?" Serena asked. "Sometimes we go to the library and get books, or we do art projects. Last week we made a volcano out of paper and baking soda, and it erupted everywhere, and Daddy had to clean the kitchen for like an hour." Mia giggled at the memory. "He said we weren't doing science experiments in the apartment anymore, but I don't think he meant it." "I absolutely meant it," Caleb said, but his tone was affectionate. "Your volcano destroyed my security deposit." "What's a security deposit?" "Money I'll probably never see again thanks to your love of explosive experiments." Mia considered this, then shrugged and returned to her hot chocolate. A comfortable silence settled over them, the kind of silence that happens when people are content to just exist in proximity without filling every moment with words. Serena sipped her hot chocolate and realized something startling. She felt relaxed. Actually genuinely relaxed in a way she couldn't remember feeling in years. No agenda running in the back of her mind, no mental calculations about what this conversation might yield in terms of business opportunities or strategic relationships. Just sitting on a bench with a tired server and his energetic daughter, watching the river flow past. "Can I ask you something?" Caleb said after a while. "Sure." "That night at the gala, in your speech you talked about success and seeing people and all that. Did you mean it? Or was it just good rhetoric for the moment?" The question was gentle but probing. Serena felt Mia's small body warm against her side, felt the November sun on her face, felt the weight of honesty this moment seemed to require. "I meant it," she said. "Or I meant it in that moment at least. Whether I can hold on to that clarity when I'm back in my regular life. That's what I'm trying to figure out." "And? Are you figuring it out?" Serena looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the exhaustion that never quite left his eyes, the worry lines around his mouth, the careful way he held himself like someone conserving energy for the next crisis. But she also saw kindness there, and patience, and a quality she was starting to recognize as integrity. This was someone who'd built a life around showing up, around doing what needed to be done, even when it was hard, around choosing love over convenience every single day. "I'm trying," she said. "Being here with you and Mia, this feels more real than anything in my regular life. But I don't know how to bridge the gap between this and everything else." "Maybe you don't bridge it," Caleb said. "Maybe you just let this be what it is, and your regular life be what that is, and trust that eventually they'll find their own connection." That's very philosophical for a Sunday afternoon. I took one semester of community college before Mia's mom got pregnant. Philosophy 101. Only class I actually liked. He smiled slightly. The professor said the unexamined life isn't worth living, and I remember thinking, who has time to examine anything? But lately I've been wondering if I've got it backwards. Maybe I'm so busy surviving that I've forgotten to actually live. Mia popped up from between them, apparently done with her hot chocolate and their boring adult conversation. "Can I go back to the swings, please?" 15 more minutes, Caleb said. "Then we need to head home. You've got school tomorrow, and I've got an early shift." Mia raced off toward the playground, and Serena and Caleb followed at a more leisurely pace. The afternoon had that quality of ending, light starting to slant, temperature dropping a few degrees, the sense of time winding down toward evening. "Where's Mia's mom?" Serena asked quietly. "That's okay to ask." Caleb's expression tightened slightly. "She left when Mia was 2. Said single motherhood wasn't what she'd signed up for, that she was too young to be trapped by a kid. Last I heard she was in California, completely off the grid. No contact, no child support, nothing." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I mean, it sucked at the time. It still sucks sometimes. But Mia doesn't really remember her, which is maybe for the best. And honestly, we're better off. I'd rather do this alone than have Mia grow up watching her mother resent her existence." "Do you think you'll ever—" Serena stopped, unsure how to finish the question. "Date again? Have another relationship?" Caleb shook his head. "I barely have time to sleep. Adding another person to this equation seems impossible." And the few times I've tried, it's been... He paused, searching for words. It's been awkward. Most women my age want someone with less baggage and more prospects. And the ones who don't usually want to play house for a few weeks before they realize that being a step-parent is actual work. That's incredibly cynical. That's incredibly accurate. But his tone wasn't bitter, just resigned. It's fine. I've got Mia, and she's the best thing I've ever done or will do. Everything else is just details. They reached the playground and found Mia attempting to convince a slightly younger child to play some elaborate game that seemed to involve racing from the swings to the slide and back again. The other child's parent watched with the weary expression of someone whose Sunday afternoon had already lasted several hours too long. She makes friends easily, Serena observed. Always has. I think it's a gift I definitely don't possess. Caleb checked his watch. We really should head out soon. I've got to get her dinner and into the bath and through homework before bedtime. Homework on Sunday night? Reading log, 20 minutes a day, and she's behind because someone convinced me we needed to spend 2 hours yesterday building a fort out of couch cushions instead of reading. Sounds like someone has excellent priorities. Someone is going to be exhausted in school tomorrow, is what someone is going to be. But Caleb's smile suggested he didn't actually regret the fort. Mia protested the departure with impressive vigor, but Caleb held firm with the practiced patience of someone who'd had this negotiation hundreds of times. Eventually, they got her moving in the direction of the park exit, though she insisted on walking backwards so she could keep watching the playground as long as possible. This was really nice, Serena said as they reached the street. Thank you for including me in your Sunday ritual. Thank you for being so good with Mia. She's already planning our next adventure, I can tell. I like her. She's genuine in a way most adults I know aren't. That's kids for you. They haven't learned to hide who they are yet. Caleb paused, seeming to wrestle with something. Look, I know you're busy with your actual life, so if this was just a one-time thing, a nice afternoon, and then back to reality. I get it. No hard feelings. Serena felt something twist in her chest. She could take the out he was offering, return to her carefully controlled existence, file this afternoon away as a pleasant anomaly, go back to being the version of herself that knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. But she didn't want to. Can I see you again? She asked. Both of you. Maybe next weekend? Caleb's expression shifted, surprise melting into something warmer, more hopeful. Yeah, I'd like that. Mia would definitely like that. Does next Sunday work? I'll make it work. They exchanged numbers again, this time with the understanding that this wasn't just courtesy, but actual intention. Mia, sensing something important happening, inserted herself into the conversation. Are you coming back next Sunday? She demanded. If that's okay with you, Serena said. Yes, we can show you the other playground, the one with the tire swing, and maybe we can bring sandwiches and have a picnic if it's not too cold. Mia, it's November, Caleb said gently. So? We can wear coats and eat fast. Serena laughed. A picnic sounds perfect, actually. They said goodbye on the corner of 72nd and Broadway, Mia insisting on a hug that Serena returned awkwardly at first, and then with more confidence. Caleb gave her a small wave, and then they were walking away down the street, Mia's voice carrying back as she chattered about everything they'd done and everything they'd do next time. Serena stood there for a long moment, watching them disappear into the crowd of Sunday pedestrians. She pulled out her phone and saw 17 missed calls, 43 emails, and a series of increasingly urgent texts from Jennifer about the canceled investor dinner and whether Serena needed her to do damage control. She should respond, should explain, apologize, reschedule, should slip back into her role as CEO, decision maker, the person who never canceled on investors for something as trivial as a park visit. Instead, she typed out a single message to Jennifer. Taking the evening off. Handle anything urgent and we'll regroup tomorrow morning. Then she turned off her phone entirely. The subway ride home felt different than the journey up. Serena sat wedged between a woman with shopping bags and a teenager with headphones, and instead of feeling claustrophobic or impatient, she found herself studying the other passengers. All these people with their own lives, their own Sundays, their own complicated networks of love and obligation and small moments of joy. How often had she traveled through the city treating everyone as background noise, as obstacles between her and wherever she needed to be? When had she stopped seeing people as people and started seeing them as categories. Useful, not useful, worth her time, not worth her time. Back in her apartment, Serena stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at Manhattan glittering in the early evening. Usually this view made her feel powerful, like she'd conquered something by achieving a home in the sky. Tonight, it just made her feel isolated. Her laptop sat on the coffee table, closed but calling to her with the siren song of work waiting to be done. Emails that needed responses, decks that needed reviewing, strategies that needed refining. The machinery of her life grinding forward, indifferent to whether she was present or not. But for once, Serena didn't open the laptop. Instead, she made herself dinner, actual cooking, not ordering in, and sat at her dining table that usually served as overflow desk space. She ate slowly, tasting her food instead of just consuming fuel. She thought about Mia's ant observation, about Caleb's quiet strength, about swing sets and hot chocolate, and the strange luxury of an afternoon with no agenda. Her phone, when she finally turned it back on, exploded with notifications. But buried among them was one new text from Caleb. Mia wants me to tell you that you're her new favorite person, and she's already planning next Sunday's picnic menu. Also, I had a really good time today. Thanks for showing up. Serena typed back, I had a good time too. Tell Mia I'm honored to be her favorite. And Caleb, thank you for letting me into your Sunday. It meant more than you probably realize. She sent the message and sat back, watching the city lights blur in through the windows. Somewhere out there, Caleb was probably reading to Mia, or helping with homework, or negotiating bedtime. Somewhere out there, life was happening in small, messy, beautiful increments that had nothing to do with quarterly earnings, or market disruption, or any of the things Serena had spent a decade believing mattered most. The realization didn't come as a thunderclap, but as a slow recognition, like watching the sun rise and understanding that night had ended without being able to pinpoint the exact moment of transition. She'd built a life optimized for success as society defined it, but she'd forgotten to optimize for the things that made life actually worth living. Her laptop still sat on the coffee table, but Serena walked past it to her bedroom. She changed into pajamas and climbed into bed with a book she'd been meaning to read for months, one that had nothing to do with business or technology or self-optimization. Tomorrow she'd be CEO Serena again. She'd handle the fallout from the canceled dinner, smooth over any ruffled feathers, make the strategic decisions that kept her company on its trajectory. But tonight, just for tonight, she let herself be the person who'd swung on a playground and drank hot chocolate and made plans for a picnic with a 7-year-old and her father. The person who'd been invited into someone's Sunday and shown up. The person who was starting to understand that showing up might be the most important thing she'd ever learned to do. Outside her window, the city hummed its eternal song, ambition and striving and the endless forward motion that defined this place. But inside her apartment, in the quiet of her bedroom, Serena felt something different taking root. Not ambition exactly, but something softer and maybe more durable. Hope, she thought, or possibility, or maybe just the recognition that there were other ways to measure a life beyond the metrics she'd been using. She fell asleep thinking about swing sets and ant trails and a small hand grabbing hers with absolute confidence. And for the first time in months, she didn't dream about product launches or board meetings or any of the things that usually filled her sleeping hours. She dreamed about magic things instead. The following Sunday arrived with that peculiar November weather that couldn't decide between autumn and winter, cold enough for heavy jackets but bright enough to make the cold feel bearable. Serena stood in her kitchen at noon, staring at the contents of her refrigerator with the bewildered expression of someone who'd just realized they had no idea how to make sandwiches for a picnic. She'd never done this before. Not once in her adult life had she prepared food for a casual outdoor meal with anyone, let alone a 7-year-old with strong opinions about sandwich construction. Her refrigerator contained Greek yogurt, pre-made salads from Whole Foods, champagne that had been there for 6 months, and condiments she couldn't remember buying. After 20 minutes of increasingly frantic Googling, Serena gave up and ordered sandwich supplies delivered from the closest deli. While she waited, she changed clothes 3 times, each outfit feeling wrong in different ways. Too formal, too casual, too much like she was trying to impress a tired server and his daughter, instead of just showing up as herself. Finally, she settled on dark jeans, boots, a soft gray sweater, and the same navy jacket from last week. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw someone caught between two versions of herself, the polished CEO and whoever this new person was becoming. The stitches didn't quite line up yet, but at least she was trying. The deli delivery arrived with everything she'd ordered, plus a cheerful note. Enjoy your picnic. She assembled sandwiches with the careful concentration usually reserved for board presentations, wrapped them in wax paper, and packed them in a basket she'd ordered online at 11 p.m. the night before because apparently picnics required specific containers. Her phone buzzed. Caleb. Mia is vibrating with excitement. Fair warning, she's been talking about this picnic since the moment she woke up. Serena smiled and typed back, "Tell her I made sandwiches. My first ever picnic sandwiches." The response came quickly. "She's impressed. I'm impressed. See you at 2? See you then." The park looked different this week. More people taking advantage of the decent weather, dogs running in circles, a group of teenagers playing soccer on a field near the playground. Serena spotted Caleb and Mia near their usual meeting spot, but this time Mia carried a backpack that looked almost as big as she was, and Caleb held a rolled-up blanket under one arm. "You're here!" Mia launched herself at Serena with the unself-conscious enthusiasm of someone who'd already decided they were friends. "I brought so many things. I have my sketch pad and colored pencils and Mr. Peanuts because he wanted to come to the picnic and a book about space that Daddy got me from the library." "That sounds like excellent picnic supplies," Serena said, returning the hug with more ease than last week. "What did you bring?" Mia demanded. Serena held up her basket. "Sandwiches, turkey and cheese, and peanut butter and jelly in case the turkey ones aren't good." "I love both of those." Mia grabbed Serena's free hand and started pulling her toward a spot under a large oak tree. "Come on! Daddy found the perfect place!" The perfect place turned out to be a relatively flat patch of grass with a view of the river, and enough tree cover to block the wind. Caleb spread the blanket with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this many times, weighing down the corners with their bags. "She's been up since 6, he said quietly to Serena as Mia unpacked her backpack with the intensity of someone preparing for a military campaign. "Woke me up to make sure I hadn't forgotten about today." "As if I could forget," Serena said. "I've been thinking about this all week." Something flickered across Caleb's face. Surprise maybe, or pleasure, or that same cautious hope Serena felt whenever she thought about these Sunday afternoons. "Yeah, me too." They settled onto the blanket, Mia positioning herself in the middle again, her supplies arranged in a careful semicircle around her. The sandwiches received thorough inspection and enthusiastic approval, though Mia insisted on deconstructing hers to examine the individual components before reassembling it to her specifications. "This is the best picnic ever," she announced through a mouthful of peanut butter. "Even better than the one we had in summer when Daddy forgot the drinks and we had to share one water bottle." "We've established that I'm not great at planning," Caleb said with good humor. "That's why it's nice to have Serena here. She actually remembers important things like beverages." "I brought juice boxes," Serena said, producing them from her basket like a magician pulling rabbits from a hat. "Apple and fruit punch. I wasn't sure what you'd like." Mia's eyes went wide. "You brought juice boxes? Daddy never lets me have juice boxes because he says they're too expensive." Caleb's expression tightened slightly. "Mia." "It's okay," Serena interrupted gently. "I'm glad I could bring something special." But the moment had shifted something in the air between them. Serena saw Caleb's jaw clench, saw the way his shoulders tensed. She'd stepped on something without meaning to, had highlighted the economic gap between them in a way that made him uncomfortable. "Can I draw your picture?" Mia asked Serena, apparently oblivious to the tension. "I'm getting really good at faces. Daddy says I'm going to be a famous artist someday." "I'd love that," Serena said, grateful for the distraction. Mia pulled out her sketch pad and pencils and arranged herself cross-legged, her tongue poking out slightly as she concentrated. Caleb gathered up sandwich wrappers and fussed with the blanket corners, and generally avoided making eye contact. After a few minutes of increasingly awkward silence, Serena spoke quietly. "I'm sorry about the juice boxes comment. I wasn't thinking." Caleb glanced at her, then at Mia, who was absorbed in her drawing. "It's fine. You didn't mean anything by it." "But it bothered you." "It's just—" He stopped, searching for words. "It's weird, being around someone who doesn't have to think about money, who can just buy juice boxes without calculating whether that's $15 a month that should go to something else. I know that's my issue, not yours. But yeah, it bothers me sometimes. I understand that, Serena said carefully, and I'm still figuring out how to navigate this. I don't want to make you feel, she struggled for the right word, less than, or like I'm being condescending. But I also don't know how to just be normal around money because money has never been normal for me. What do you mean? I grew up in foster care, Serena said, the words coming out before she could second guess them. Bounced between homes until I was 16, never had anything I could count on keeping. Then I got lucky with a scholarship and rode that luck all the way through Stanford and into my first company. So I get the counting dollars thing. I did it for most of my life. The not counting part is actually newer and still feels strange sometimes. Caleb's expression shifted, surprise giving way to something more complicated. I had no idea. Most people don't. It doesn't fit the narrative of tech wunderkind, you know? Self-made billionaire sounds better when people assume you came from at least middle-class stability. Serena watched Mia draw, the little girl's pencil moving across paper with careful strokes. I think that's part of why this, she gestured between them, feels important to me. You see me as a person who needed help with a torn dress, not as a bank account or a networking opportunity. And that's rarer than you'd think. Done, Mia announced, holding up her sketchpad triumphantly. The drawing showed Serena in simplified form, dark hair, big smile, stick figure body wearing what was clearly meant to be her navy jacket. But what caught Serena's attention was the detail Mia had added. Small flowers drawn around the figure, and a speech bubble that said, "Nice lady." "That's beautiful," Serena said, her throat tight. "Can I take a picture of it?" "You can have the whole thing." Mia tore the page out carefully and handed it over. "I'll make Daddy one next so he doesn't feel left out." "I would never feel left out of your art," Caleb said, ruffling Mia's hair, "but I appreciate it anyway." They spent the next hour in a comfortable rotation between conversation and comfortable silence. Mia drew picture after picture, narrating elaborate stories about each one. Caleb stretched out on his back and pointed out cloud shapes. Serena found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't known she needed. The constant hum of anxiety that usually ran beneath her thoughts going quiet for stretches of minutes at a time. "What's that building?" Mia asked, pointing across the river at the New Jersey skyline. "I'm not sure," Serena admitted. "I've lived here for 6 years and I've never actually looked." 6 years and you don't know what you're looking at," Caleb's tone was teasing. "What have you been doing with your time?" "Working mostly, looking at screens instead of skylines." "That's sad," Mia pronounced with the blunt honesty of childhood. "You should look at things that aren't screens more often." "You're absolutely right," Serena agreed. "I should." A soccer ball landed near their blanket, followed by a teenager who jogged over apologetically. "Sorry about that," he said, scooping up the ball. "No problem," Caleb said easily. As the teenager ran back to his game, Mia stood up and stretched. "Can we go see the river? I want to look at the boats." "Stay where we can see you," Caleb called as she took off toward the waterfront path. Then to Serena. "I should probably follow her. She's got this habit of making friends with every person she meets, and I never know if they're friendly back or just being polite." "I'll come with you." They walked behind Mia, who had indeed stopped to chat with an elderly man feeding pigeons. Her animated gestures suggested she was telling him a story, and his indulgent smile suggested he was genuinely entertained. "She's going to be either a politician or a talk show host," Caleb said. "I can't decide which." "Why not both?" "Fair point." They reached the waterfront and stood at the railing, watching boats cut through the gray water. The city felt different from this angle. Still present, but less overwhelming, like you could see the edges of it instead of being swallowed by its center. "Can I ask you something?" Caleb said after a moment. "Always." "Why are you here? I mean really here." Not the polite answer. "You're a billionaire tech CEO. You could be anywhere, doing anything, with anyone. But you're spending your Sunday afternoons with a broke single dad and his kid. Why?" Serena considered the question, considered giving him the easy answer about connection and authenticity and finding meaning. But Caleb had shared something real about his discomfort with money, and that deserved real honesty in return. "Because when I'm with you and Mia, I remember who I wanted to be before I became who I am, she said quietly. I built this entire life around proving I could survive, that I could be successful enough that no one could ever take anything from me again, and I did it. I'm more successful than I ever imagined, but somewhere along the way I forgot that survival and living aren't the same thing. She turned to look at him. You asked me to help fix a dress, and you didn't want anything in return. No one in my world does anything without wanting something in return. And then I met Mia, and she just decided I was safe and worth her time, and Serena's voice caught. It reminded me that I used to believe people could be good just because, not because it served their interests. I want to be around people who still believe that. People who haven't forgotten how to be human in simple ways. Caleb was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the river. That's a lot of pressure to put on a random server and his kid. I know. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. I'm not complaining, he interrupted gently. Just observing. You're looking for something I'm not sure we can give you. We're not magic, Serena. We're just people trying to get by. But that's exactly what I need, Serena said. People who are just trying to get by, who haven't optimized every interaction, who still know how to sit on a blanket and eat sandwiches and look at clouds without checking their phone every 3 minutes. Look, Mia's voice carried across the distance between them. She was pointing at something in the water, a bird diving for fish, its movements quick and precise. Did you see that? Did you see how fast it went? They walked over to where she stood, and Caleb explained that it was a cormorant, that they were excellent swimmers, that they dried their wings after diving. Mia absorbed this information with the seriousness of someone cataloging important facts about the world. Can we come back next week and see if he's still here? She asked. If the weather's good, Caleb said. And if Serena wants to keep hanging out with us? Do you? Mia turned to Serena with those direct eyes that demanded honest answers. Want to keep hanging out with us? Very much, Serena said without hesitation. Good, because we're a package deal. You can't just be friends with Daddy and not me, or friends with me and not Daddy. That wouldn't be fair. Mia, Caleb said with gentle warning. What? It's true. Mia grabbed both their hands. Come on, I want to show you the turtle pond before it gets dark. She pulled them back toward the interior of the park, and Serena found herself walking hand in hand with this 7-year-old force of nature while Caleb kept pace on Mia's other side. They must have looked like a family to casual observers, mom, dad, daughter, out for a Sunday afternoon. The thought sent a strange pang through Serena's chest, something caught between longing and fear. The turtle pond was exactly what it sounded like, a small body of water where turtles sunned themselves on rocks and logs. Mia pressed against the low fence, counting them carefully. 7, she announced. There are 7 turtles. That's how old I am. That means it's good luck. Is that official good luck or just Mia logic? Caleb asked. Mia logic is the best logic, Mia said with absolute confidence. Serena's phone buzzed in her pocket, once, twice, 3 times in quick succession. She pulled it out and saw her executive team in full crisis mode. Something about the quarterly report, about numbers not matching projections, about needing her input immediately. You need to take that? Caleb asked, noticing her expression. No, Serena said, silencing the phone and putting it back in her pocket. Whatever it is can wait until tomorrow. But the interruption had broken something. She felt the weight of her other life pressing in. All the people who needed decisions from her, all the responsibilities she'd set aside for a few hours. The 2 worlds that had felt so separate were starting to collide. Hey, Caleb said quietly while Mia was absorbed in turtle watching. If you need to go deal with work stuff, we understand. We're not going to be offended. I don't want to go, Serena said. That's the problem. I should want to go handle this crisis. A few weeks ago, I would have already been on my phone managing the situation, but right now, all I want is to stay here and count turtles with Mia. Then stay. It's not that simple. Isn't it? Caleb turned to face her fully. You're the CEO. You get to decide what's urgent and what can wait. Unless you're telling me this thing is actually on fire, it can probably wait a few hours. He was right, and that was terrifying. How long had it been since Serena had chosen personal time over work time without guilt or anxiety? How long had she operated under the assumption that everything was always urgent, that her presence was always required, that the company would collapse without her constant attention? "You're right," she said. "It can wait." Mia turned away from the turtle pond, her face alight with discovery. "Guess what? One of the turtles winked at me. I think he's my favorite." "Turtles can't wink," Caleb said. "This one did. I saw him. He closed one eye and everything." "That turtle probably just had something in his eye." "Or," Serena interjected, "he knew quality when he saw it and wanted to acknowledge Mia's excellent turtle watching skills." Mia beamed. "See, Daddy? Serena gets it." They stayed at the park until the sun started its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Mia's energy finally began to flag, her movements becoming slower, her chatter less constant. She leaned against Caleb's side as they packed up the blanket and gathered scattered colored pencils. "Best Sunday ever," she mumbled, her eyes heavy. "What about the Sunday we went to the zoo?" Caleb asked. "This one is better, because Serena was here." The simple declaration hit Serena harder than it should have. This child barely knew her, had met her exactly twice, but had already decided she belonged in their small family unit. The trust was humbling and terrifying in equal measure. They walked slowly toward the park exit, Mia dragging her feet, Caleb carrying both their bags. At the street corner where they'd part ways, Mia insisted on another hug. "Next Sunday?" she asked, her voice hopeful. "Next Sunday," Serena confirmed. "Promise?" "I promise." Mia seemed satisfied with this and allowed herself to be directed toward home. But she turned back one more time, waving frantically until Caleb gently redirected her attention forward. Serena and Caleb stood together for a moment, neither quite ready to leave. "She's getting attached," Caleb said quietly. "I can see it happening." "Is that bad?" "I don't know yet. Depends on whether you stick around." His expression was serious, almost worried. "I need to be careful about who I let into her life. She's already lost one parent. If you're going to bail when this gets complicated or inconvenient—" "I'm not going to bail," Serena said quickly. Then more honestly, "I can't promise I won't mess this up. I don't know how to do this, whatever this is, but I'm not going anywhere just because it gets complicated." "This is already complicated," Caleb pointed out. "You're a billionaire. I serve food at parties. You give speeches to rooms full of important people. I clean up after them. The math here doesn't really work." "Maybe the math doesn't need to work. Maybe we just—" Serena struggled to articulate what she meant. "Maybe we just see where this goes without trying to calculate the odds." That's very optimistic for someone who works in predictive analytics. "Maybe I'm tired of predictions." She met his eyes. "Maybe I want something that doesn't make sense on paper." Caleb studied her face, and Serena had the sense of being truly seen, not assessed or evaluated or measured against some rubric, just seen. "Okay," he said finally. "We'll see where it goes." "Next Sunday?" "Next Sunday." "But Serena?" He paused. "At some point we're going to have to talk about the elephant in the room. The fact that we come from completely different worlds. The fact that I don't even know what your actual life looks like beyond these park meetings. The fact that you're—" He gestured vaguely. "You. And I'm just me." "You're not just anything," Serena said fiercely. "You're one of the most capable, genuine people I've ever met. You're an incredible father. You show up for your kid every single day despite being exhausted and overwhelmed and broke," Caleb finished. "Let's not forget broke. Because that matters, Serena. It matters that I'm picking up extra shifts just to cover rent. It matters that I can't afford juice boxes. It matters that you probably spent more on those sandwiches today than I spend on groceries in a week. So we have different financial situations. That doesn't—" "It does, though." Caleb's voice was gentle but firm. "It does matter. Because at some point you're going to want to do something or go somewhere or suggest something that costs money I don't have. And I'm going to have to either let you pay, which makes me feel like I'm taking advantage, or say no, which makes me feel like I'm holding you back. There's no good option there." Serena wanted to argue, wanted to insist that they could navigate it, that money didn't have to be an obstacle. But she could see in his expression that this was real concern, not hypothetical anxiety. He'd thought about this, had probably been thinking about it since their first coffee text exchange. Then we figure it out, she said. Together, we communicate. We're honest about what works and what doesn't. We don't let money become the thing that... She stopped, surprised by the intensity in her own voice. We don't let it become the thing that ruins something good. Is this good? Caleb asked quietly. I mean, I think it is, but I don't trust my judgment on this. I haven't dated anyone seriously in 5 years. I don't know if I'm reading signals right or projecting or what. It's good, Serena said with certainty. It's really good. And terrifying, but mostly good. A smile tugged at the corner of Caleb's mouth. Yeah, mostly good. They stood there on the street corner as the city moved around them, cars honking, people walking past, the endless churn of urban life. Two people from different worlds trying to figure out if the distance between them was crossable or just a nice fantasy that would eventually collapse under the weight of reality. I should go, Caleb said finally. Mia's going to fall asleep on her feet if I don't get her home soon. Go. I'll text you this week. Looking forward to it. He walked away, and Serena watched until he turned the corner and disappeared. Then she pulled out her phone and faced the accumulated damage from 3 hours of being unreachable. 47 emails, 12 missed calls, a series of increasingly frantic texts from her executive team about the quarterly report issue that had apparently resolved itself in her absence. We figured it out, her CFO had written. Just a data entry error. All good now. Sorry for the panic. Serena stared at that message for a long moment. All the urgency, all the crisis energy, all the implied need for her immediate attention, and it had resolved without her. The company had survived 3 hours of her being present somewhere else. She scrolled through her emails, marking most of them for tomorrow. A few required quick responses, which she typed out with efficient speed, but for the first time in her career, she didn't feel the usual anxiety about being unavailable. Didn't feel like she was failing by not being in constant contact. The subway ride home passed in a blur of thought. She kept seeing Mia's drawing, the simple stick figure with flowers, and the speech bubble that said "nice lady." Such an uncomplicated assessment, such straightforward affection. When was the last time someone had seen her as simply nice? Not brilliant or driven or successful or any of the other adjectives that usually attach to her name. Just nice. Just a person worth spending time with for no strategic reason. Back in her apartment, Serena made tea and sat at her dining table with Mia's drawing spread out in front of her. She took a picture and set it as her phone's lock screen, replacing the default image of some abstract art that had come preloaded. Her laptop called to her from the coffee table, but she ignored it. Instead, she pulled out a notebook, an actual paper notebook that she'd bought years ago with good intentions and never used, and started writing. She wrote about foster care, about the specific terror of never having a place that was truly yours, about learning to sleep light because homes changed and you never knew when the next move was coming, about building an empire because empires were harder to take away than apartments or families or any of the other temporary fixtures that define childhood poverty. She wrote about the gala and the torn dress and meeting Caleb in that hallway, about how his competence had been so startling precisely because it came with no price tag, no expectation of reciprocity. She wrote about Mia's immediate trust, about swing sets and hot chocolate, and the strange gift of being adopted into someone else's Sunday routine. And she wrote about fear, about the growing certainty that what she was feeling for Caleb and Mia was becoming something she couldn't control or optimize or strategize around, something that required vulnerability and trust and all the things she'd spent her adult life learning to live without. The words poured out until her hand cramped and her tea went cold. When she finally stopped, she had 15 pages of raw honesty that she'd never show anyone, but that felt important to have externalized. Her phone buzzed with a text. Caleb. Home safely. Mia fell asleep in the car, and I had to carry her upstairs. She's clutching the drawing she made of me like it's precious cargo. Thanks for today. It meant a lot to both of us. Serena typed back. It meant a lot to me too. More than I know how to explain. You're doing fine at explaining. Better than fine, actually. I'm usually better with algorithms than emotions. Lucky for you, I'm fluent in both kids and feelings. Between the two of us, we might manage actual communication. Serena smiled at her phone. I'd like that.
Me too. Sleep well, Serena. You too, Caleb. She sat there with her phone in her hand, rereading the exchange like a teenager analyzing every word for hidden meaning. This was absurd. She was a CEO who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals and faced down rooms full of skeptical investors. She shouldn't be getting butterflies over text messages from a server she'd known for 3 weeks. But she was. She absolutely was. And instead of that feeling wrong or inappropriate or like something to be managed and controlled, it felt like the first honest thing that had happened to her in years. Serena cleaned up her tea, put away her notebook, and got ready for bed.
Tomorrow she'd go back to being the polished version of herself, the one who ran meetings and made decisions and embodied the success story everyone expected. But tonight, in the privacy of her apartment with Mia's drawing on her lock screen and Caleb's words in her message history, she let herself be someone simpler. Someone who'd spent a Sunday afternoon counting turtles and eating sandwiches and laughing at a 7-year-old's insistence that she'd been winked at by pond life. Someone who was starting to understand that the most valuable things couldn't be measured in quarterly reports or market valuations. Someone who was falling for a package deal and didn't want to stop the fall. The city lights glittered through her windows, and somewhere in those millions of illuminated rectangles, Caleb was probably collapsed on his couch after finally getting Mia into bed. Maybe he was thinking about today too. Maybe he was wondering if this could work, if the distance between their worlds was bridgeable or just a gap destined to swallow anything they tried to build. Serena didn't know the answer, but for the first time in her carefully planned life, she was okay with not knowing. She was okay with just seeing what happened next. The fourth Sunday arrived with rain, not the gentle misty kind that made the city look romantic, but the aggressive November downpour that sent people scrambling for awnings and turned the streets into rivers of gray water. Serena stood at her window watching the storm batter Manhattan and felt her phone buzz with the text she'd been half expecting. Rain check on the park? Literally? Caleb's message included a rain cloud emoji that Mia had probably insisted he add. Mia is devastated, but I'm not subjecting a 7-year-old to pneumonia for a picnic. Serena typed back quickly. Come to my place instead. I can order food. Mia can draw. We'll stay dry. The response took longer this time. She could almost see Caleb on the other end wrestling with the implications of that invitation. Finally, you sure? That's a big step from park meetings. I'm sure, unless you're not comfortable with it. It's not about comfort. It's about another pause. Okay, honestly, I'm nervous about Mia seeing how you live. She's 7. She doesn't understand wealth inequality. She's going to have questions I don't know how to answer. Serena's heart twisted. She'd been so focused on wanting to spend time with them that she hadn't thought through the logistics, the way her apartment would translate to a child who counted juice boxes as special treats. But backing down now felt wrong, like she was ashamed of having money or ashamed of them for not having it. Then we'll answer them together, she typed. And if it's too weird, we can leave and go somewhere else. But I'd really like to see you both today, rain and all. This time the response came quickly. Okay, give me your address, we'll be there in an hour. Serena spent the next 45 minutes in a panic she hadn't experienced since her first investor pitch. She rushed through her apartment trying to see it through Mia's eyes, through Caleb's eyes. The floor-to-ceiling windows suddenly looked obscene. The minimalist furniture seemed cold and unwelcoming. The original artwork on the walls screamed money in ways she'd never noticed before. She couldn't change the apartment, but she could make it less intimidating. She pulled blankets and pillows onto the living room floor, creating a cozy space near the windows where they could sit and look out at the storm. She ordered pizza, not from some artisanal place, just regular cheese and pepperoni from a neighborhood spot. She put away the coffee table books about architecture and design, replacing them with nothing because she didn't own any other books. That realization stung more than it should have. When the doorbell rang, Serena's hands were shaking slightly. She took a breath, smoothed down her sweater, and opened the door. Caleb stood there in a rain-soaked jacket, water dripping from his hair. Mia was slightly drier, protected by a bright yellow raincoat that was too big for her, her eyes already wide as she peered past Serena into the apartment. Hi, Serena said, suddenly awkward. Come in, you're soaked. They stepped inside and Serena watched Mia's expression transform from curiosity to wonder to something like shock. The little girl turned in a slow circle, taking in the space, the high ceilings, the gleaming kitchen, the view that stretched from the Hudson River to the downtown skyline. "Whoa," Mia breathed. "You live in the sky." 23rd floor, Serena confirmed, helping Caleb out of his wet jacket. "The elevator ride up is pretty long." "Do you have neighbors?" Mia asked, still turning. "Or is this whole building just you?" "I have neighbors, lots of them. But yeah, this whole apartment is just me." "Just you?" Mia's voice rose with disbelief. "But it's so big. Where do all your people sleep?" "What people, sweetie?" Caleb asked gently. "Her family. Her kids. Her—" Mia gestured vaguely, trying to encompass all the humans she assumed must fill this space. "I live alone," Serena said quietly. "It's just me." The concept clearly baffled Mia. She looked at her father, then back at Serena, then at the vast expanse of the apartment. "But that's so many rooms for one person. Don't you get lonely?" The question hit harder than any business competitor's criticism ever had. Out of the mouths of children came the uncomfortable truths adults learned to dance around. "Sometimes," Serena admitted. "Yeah, sometimes I do." Caleb's expression was complicated, part discomfort at the obvious wealth disparity, part something softer that might have been empathy. He cleared his throat. "Nice place. Great view." "Thanks. I set up some blankets by the windows so we could watch the storm. And I ordered pizza. Hope that's okay." "Pizza!" Mia's attention immediately shifted from existential questions about wealth to more pressing childhood concerns. "What kind?" "Cheese and pepperoni. But if you want something else, I can order more." "Those are my favorites." Mia kicked off her rain boots, light-up sneakers that had seen better days, and patted across the hardwood floor in her socks. She made a beeline for the blanket nest Serena had created, throwing herself into the pillows with abandon. "This is like a fort! Daddy, look! It's a fort with the best view ever!" Caleb followed more slowly, and Serena could see him taking in details. The designer furniture, the smart home controls on the wall, the Viking range in the kitchen that probably cost more than his annual salary. His jaw was tight, his shoulders tense. "You okay?" Serena asked quietly. "Yeah, just processing." He managed a small smile. "You said you grew up in foster care, but this—" He gestured at the apartment. "This is a lot of distance to travel." 10 years of 80-hour weeks and 3 successful exits, Serena said, plus luck and timing and being in the right place at the right moment. She paused. "Does it bother you, the apartment?" "I'm trying to figure out if it should bother me," Caleb said honestly. "Part of me is just impressed. You clearly worked incredibly hard to get here. But another part is doing the math on how many months of my rent this place costs per month and feeling a little sick about it. For what it's worth, it mostly just feels empty." Serena looked around her apartment, seeing it fresh through his perspective. "I bought it because it was what successful people were supposed to want. But I don't think I've ever felt at home here. It's more like a really expensive hotel I never check out of." "Come on," Mia called from her blanket fort. "The storm is getting bigger." They joined her by the windows, settling into the nest of pillows. The rain hammered against the glass, wind driving it in sheets across the city. Lightning flickered in the distance, followed by the low rumble of thunder. Mia pressed her face against the window, enraptured. "Have you ever seen lightning from this high up?" she asked. "Not really," Serena admitted. "I'm usually at my computer when it storms. I don't pay much attention to the weather." "That's sad," Mia said matter-of-factly. "Storms are one of the best things. They're like the sky is having feelings." Mia's theory, Caleb explained with affectionate amusement, is that weather is really just the planet expressing emotions. Rain is when Earth is sad, snow is when it's peaceful, storms are when it's angry. "What's sunshine?" Serena asked. "Happy, obviously." Mia rolled her eyes like this was the most basic information imaginable. "But not boring happy, excited happy, like when it's your birthday." The doorbell rang, announcing the pizza's arrival. Serena retrieved it along with plates and napkins, bringing everything back to their blanket fort. They ate sitting cross-legged on the floor, paper plates balanced on their knees, watching the storm rage outside while staying warm and dry inside. "This is the best rainy day ever," Mia declared through a mouthful of cheese. Even better than when we stayed in bed all day because Daddy was sick and we watched movies. That was a good day, Caleb agreed, though I was pretty miserable through most of it. But I took care of you. I brought you water and crackers and I let you watch your boring shows. You did take excellent care of me, Caleb confirmed, meeting Serena's eyes over Mia's head with a look that said, "This is my life, chaotic and beautiful and held together with string and stubbornness." After pizza, Mia discovered that rain against floor-to-ceiling windows created interesting sound patterns. She pressed her ear to the glass, conducting experiments about which spots were loudest, recruiting Serena and Caleb to do the same. They spent 20 minutes like that, 3 people listening to rain like it was music, finding rhythms in the randomness. "Can I see the rest of your house?" Mia asked eventually, her curiosity no longer containable. Serena glanced at Caleb, who gave a small nod. "Sure. It's not that exciting, but I can give you the tour." She showed them the kitchen with its restaurant-grade appliances that she barely used, the dining room table that had never hosted a dinner party, the guest bedroom that had never had a guest, her home office with its multiple monitors and ergonomic chair and wall of business books she'd read once and never touched again. "Where are your toys?" Mia asked, puzzled. "I don't have any toys." "Well, what about your kid stuff? Like your drawings and your stuffed animals and your old toys from when you were little?" "I didn't really have stuff like that," Serena said carefully. "I moved around a lot when I was a kid, so I couldn't keep much." Mia processed this information with visible confusion. "So you don't have anything from when you were my age?" "Not really, no." "That's the saddest thing I ever heard." Mia's eyes filled with tears, and suddenly she was throwing her arms around Serena's waist, hugging her fiercely. "You can have Mr. Peanuts if you want. I know he's mine, but I can share him with you because you don't have any stuffed animals, and everyone should have at least one." Serena felt her throat close up. She knelt down to Mia's level, carefully returning the hug. "That's incredibly kind of you, but Mr. Peanuts is yours. I'm okay without stuffed animals." "No one is okay without stuffed animals," Mia said with conviction. "They're important for when you're sad or scared or can't sleep." Caleb stepped in, his voice gentle. "Hey, Mia Bug, why don't we let Serena keep showing us around, okay? Save the stuffed animal crisis management for later." Mia nodded reluctantly, but she kept hold of Serena's hand as they continued the tour. The master bedroom felt particularly empty, shown through a child's eyes. Just a bed, a dresser, a closet full of clothes that all looked the same. No pictures on the nightstand, no personal touches that suggested a human actually lived here. "It's like a magazine," Mia said, not quite approvingly. "Pretty, but not cozy." "You're not wrong," Serena admitted. "I'm not very good at cozy." "We could help." Mia's enthusiasm reignited instantly. "Daddy and me are really good at making places cozy. We could bring some of our extra blankets and maybe some drawings to put on your walls and—" "Mia," Caleb interrupted gently. "That's a very nice offer, but Serena might like her apartment the way it is." "Do you?" Mia asked Serena directly. "Like it the way it is?" Serena looked around her bedroom, at the designer furniture and the neutral colors, and the complete absence of personality or warmth. She thought about Caleb's apartment, which she'd never seen but could imagine based on Mia's stories. Probably small and cluttered and full of Mia's artwork and projects, and the accumulated debris of actually living instead of just existing in space. "No," she said honestly, "I don't think I do like it the way it is." Mia beamed. "Then we'll help. We're really good at fixing things." They returned to the living room, and Mia immediately started making plans. She'd bring some of her extra drawings. They'd get plants because rooms needed living things. Maybe some colorful pillows because everything here was gray or white or beige. She was so earnest, so certain that the problem of Serena's empty life could be solved with a few cheerful additions. Caleb caught Serena's eye and mouthed, "Sorry," but Serena shook her head. She wasn't sorry. Mia's innocent assessment had named something Serena had been avoiding for years, the fact that she'd built a beautiful, expensive prison for herself and called it success. "Can we play a game?" Mia asked. "I brought cards." She dug in her backpack and produced a deck of worn playing cards held together with a rubber band. They played Go Fish on the blankets while the storm continued outside. Mia won 3 games in a row, celebrating each victory with enthusiasm that suggested she'd conquered nations rather than collected sets of cards. Caleb and Serena traded amused looks over her head, and Serena felt that same sense of rightness she'd experienced in the park, the feeling that this was what life was supposed to look like. Not deals and meetings and constant striving, but sitting on the floor playing cards with people who genuinely wanted her there. "I have to use the bathroom," Mia announced after the 4th game. "Which door is it?" Serena pointed her toward the guest bathroom, and suddenly she was alone with Caleb for the first time since they'd arrived. The air between them felt charged with everything they hadn't said, all the observations neither had voiced, but both were thinking. "Thank you," Caleb said quietly, "for inviting us here. I know this wasn't easy for you." "It's my apartment. Why wouldn't it be easy?" "Because you're letting us see behind the curtain. The real you, not the park meetup version." He gestured around the space. "And I'm guessing not many people get invited here." "You're the first, actually." Serena was surprised by her own admission. "First people I've had over since I moved in. My team has been here for meetings, but that's different. This is..." She struggled for words. "This is personal." "Yeah," Caleb said softly. "It is." They looked at each other, and Serena felt the weight of attraction she'd been carefully not acknowledging for weeks. It was one thing to feel drawn to someone in the abstract safety of public parks. It was another to have him in her space, close enough to touch, with his wet hair and his kind eyes and his complete lack of artifice. "Caleb," she started, not sure where she was going with it, but Mia came barreling back into the room, her energy undimmed by hours of activity. "Can we watch a movie? Do you have a TV?" Serena did have a TV. A massive screen that emerged from a console with the push of a button, because of course she did. Mia's eyes went wide as it rose from its hiding place. "That's so cool! It's like magic!" They scrolled through streaming options, and Mia chose an animated film about a girl who could talk to animals. They settled back into the blanket nest, Mia positioned between the adults, and watched as cartoon adventures unfolded on screen. The storm continued its assault on the city, but inside the apartment they were insulated from everything: the weather, the world, the complications of their vastly different lives. Halfway through the movie, Mia's head drooped against Serena's shoulder. Her eyes fluttered closed, then opened, then closed again. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing deep and even, her small body radiating warmth. "She's out," Caleb observed quietly. "That's what happens when she burns through all her energy at once. She goes from full speed to unconscious in about 30 seconds. "Should I move?" Serena asked, afraid to disturb Mia's sleep. "Nah, you're fine. She's a heavy sleeper once she's down." Caleb reached over and brushed a strand of hair from Mia's face, his gesture so tender it made Serena's chest ache. "Sorry, our visit turned into a nap time situation." "Don't be sorry, this is..." Serena looked down at the sleeping child leaning against her, at Caleb watching his daughter with infinite love, at the storm painting the windows with water. "This is perfect." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the movie playing but neither of them really watching. Finally, Caleb spoke, his voice low to avoid waking Mia. "I've been thinking about what you said last week, about not letting money ruin something good. And I'm trying, but it's hard. Being here, seeing how you live, it's a lot to process. Not because I'm jealous or resentful, but because it highlights how different our worlds are. And I keep wondering how this could possibly work long term." Serena chose her words carefully. "I've been wondering the same thing, but then I think about how I feel when I'm with you and Mia, and nothing else has ever felt this right. So maybe the logistics don't matter as much as we think they do." "Logistics always matter," Caleb said. "They matter when you want to take Mia somewhere that costs money I don't have. They matter when your colleagues or friends want to meet me and I don't fit into that world. They matter when..." He stopped, shaking his head. "I'm sorry, I'm being negative." "No, you're being honest. That's different." Serena shifted slightly, careful not to disturb Mia. "I can't pretend to understand how this feels from your side, but I can tell you that I don't care about any of those logistics. I care about this..." She gestured to the 3 of them in the blanket fort. "About being with people who make me feel human again." Is that what we do? Caleb asked softly. Make you feel human? Yes, more than anyone has in years. They held each other's gaze, and Serena saw the moment Caleb made some internal decision. His expression shifted from worried to resolved, from holding back to leaning in. I need to tell you something, he said, and I need to say it now before I lose my nerve. Serena's heart rate picked up. Okay. I like you, not just as someone to hang out with on Sundays. I like you in the way that makes me check my phone too often and think about you when I should be focused on other things. And I know that's complicated because of who you are and who I am, and all the reasons this doesn't make sense on paper. But I needed to say it out loud because I'm tired of pretending this is just casual friendship. The confession hung in the air between them, brave and vulnerable. Serena felt her own walls crumbling, the careful distance she usually maintained with people dissolving in the face of Caleb's honesty. I like you too, she said quietly. More than like, maybe. And you're right, it's terrifying, but the alternative is going back to my empty apartment and my empty life and pretending I don't feel this. And I can't do that. I don't want to do that. So what do? We try. We figure it out as we go. We communicate when things are hard and celebrate when things are good. And we don't let the logistics scare us off before we've even really started. Caleb smiled, and it transformed his whole face. The worry lines smoothing out, his eyes brightening. That's very optimistic for someone who works in data analysis. Maybe I'm learning that not everything can be predicted or optimized. Serena glanced down at Mia, still sleeping peacefully. Maybe some things you just have to trust. Trust isn't easy for me, Caleb admitted. Mia's mom leaving kind of destroyed my ability to trust that good things stay good. I get that. Foster care taught me that anything could be taken away at any moment. That's why I built a life where I controlled everything, so nothing could be taken that I hadn't already decided to give. She paused. But control is lonely, and I'm so tired of being lonely. Yeah, Caleb said softly. Me too. The movie credits were rolling now, filling the room with upbeat music that didn't match the weight of their conversation. Mia stirred slightly but didn't wake, making a small sound before settling back into sleep. I should probably get her home, Caleb said reluctantly. It's going to be a nightmare getting her on the subway when she's this out of it. Take my car, Serena offered. My driver can take you home and bring the car back. No arguments, she added when she saw him preparing to protest. It's pouring rain, your daughter is asleep, and this is a practical solution that doesn't have to be weird. Caleb looked like he wanted to argue, but couldn't find solid ground. Okay, thank you. That's actually really helpful. Serena called her driver, then helped Caleb gather their things while Mia dozed. When the call came that the car was ready, Caleb gently lifted his daughter, and she mumbled something incomprehensible before tucking her face against his shoulder. At the door with Mia asleep between them, Caleb paused. Can I see you during the week? Not just Sundays, just you and me, without the chaperone. I'd really like that. Wednesday? I have the evening off. We could get dinner somewhere. Nowhere fancy, he added quickly. Just food and conversation. Perfect. Text me details. I will. He shifted Mia's weight slightly. Today was good, even with all the complicated stuff. Maybe especially with all the complicated stuff. Yeah, Serena agreed. It was. She walked them down to the car, standing under the building's awning as the driver loaded them in. Mia woke up just enough to wave sleepily through the window, and then they were pulling away into the rain-soaked streets. Serena rode the elevator back up to her apartment, and the emptiness hit her immediately. After hours of Mia's laughter and Caleb's presence and the sense of being part of something larger than herself, the silence felt oppressive. But different than before. Before, the silence had been just absence. Now it was contrast. The space between being alone and being connected. Between the life she'd built and the life she was starting to want. She looked at the blanket fort still arranged by the windows, at the pizza box on the counter, at Mia's forgotten hair ribbon on the couch. Evidence that people had been here. That her apartment had briefly been more than just a place to sleep and work. Her phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. Home safe. Mia woke up long enough to tell me she loves your apartment and wants to move in with you. I told her that's not how things work. She said, why not? Which is honestly a fair question. Serena smiled and typed back, "Tell her my door is always open. And Caleb, thank you for today, for being honest about the hard stuff, for trusting me with Mia, for all of it. Thank you for inviting us into your world. It's a pretty impressive world, even if it needs more cozy."
Working on that. Wednesday? Wednesday. I'll text you tomorrow with ideas. Sleep well, Serena. You too. She put down her phone and looked around her apartment with fresh eyes. Mia was right. It needed more cozy. It needed personality and warmth and signs of actual living. It needed to be more than just an expensive box that held her between work sessions. Serena started small. She left the blankets arranged by the window instead of immediately putting them away. She positioned Mia's drawing on the kitchen counter where she'd see it every morning. She ordered plants online at midnight, succulents and ferns and things the internet promised were hard to kill even for someone with her track record. Tomorrow she'd go back to being CEO Serena, handling meetings and decisions and the endless demands of running a company. But tonight she let herself be the person Mia saw, someone a little sad and lonely who needed help making spaces cozy, someone who was trying to figure out how to build a life instead of just a resume, someone who'd opened her door to a package deal and was discovering that what waited on the other side was worth every complicated moment. The rain continued through the night, and Serena fell asleep to the sound of it against her windows, the sky having feelings, just like Mia said. And for the first time in her expensive apartment with its magazine-perfect emptiness, she didn't feel quite so alone.
Wednesday arrived with the nervous energy of a first date, which is exactly what it was, despite weeks of Sundays spent building toward this moment. Serena changed her outfit 4 times before settling on jeans and a simple black sweater, dressed down for her, but probably still more expensive than anything in Caleb's closet. She left her hair loose and skipped the jewelry that usually armored her for business meetings. The restaurant Caleb had chosen was in the East Village, the kind of neighborhood spot with mismatched chairs and string lights and a menu written on a chalkboard. Serena arrived first and felt conspicuously out of place among the artists and students and people who looked comfortable in their own skin in ways she'd never quite managed. Then Caleb walked in, and everything else disappeared. He'd cleaned up, hair still damp from a recent shower, wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt that looked new or at least carefully preserved. His eyes found her immediately, and the smile that crossed his face made her heart do something complicated in her chest. "Hey," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Sorry I'm late. Subway delays." "You're not late. I was early." Serena realized her hands were shaking slightly and tucked them under the table. "How's Mia?" "Already planning next Sunday's activities. She's decided we need to teach you how to make friendship bracelets because apparently that's a critical life skill you're missing." His expression was warm, fond. "She talks about you constantly now. You've become her favorite topic of conversation." "That's a lot of pressure. You're handling it pretty well so far." Caleb picked up the menu, then set it down again. "I'm nervous. Is that weird? We've spent hours together, but suddenly this feels different." "It is different," Serena said. "No 7-year-old buffer. Just us figuring out if this thing between us works without the chaperone." "And? Does it?" Serena looked at him across the small table, at the tiredness that never quite left his eyes but somehow made him more real rather than less attractive, at the careful way he held himself like someone used to making do with less than he needed, at the kindness that radiated from him like heat from a fire. "Yeah, I think it does." They ordered food, and conversation flowed more easily than Serena had expected. Caleb told stories about Mia's latest school adventures, about the parent-teacher conference where her teacher had described her as enthusiastically spirited, which was apparently code for talks too much. Serena shared carefully edited versions of her work challenges, translating the jargon into something that didn't require a business degree to understand. "Can I ask you something?" Caleb said as they waited for their entrees. "That night at the gala, when your dress ripped, were you planning to run away before I stopped you?" "Completely. I was going to hide in my apartment for a week and never show my face in public again." "What changed your mind?" Serena thought about that moment in the hallway, about Caleb's steady hands and simple offer of help. "You didn't treat it like a catastrophe. You just saw a problem that could be solved and you solved it. That changed everything. Made me realize that maybe disasters don't have to be defining moments. Maybe they're just opportunities to see who shows up with a sewing kit." That's very philosophical. I've had a lot of time to think about it. She paused as the waiter delivered their food. That night broke something open in me. Or maybe it broke something loose. I'd been running on autopilot for so long, I'd forgotten there were other ways to live. And now? Now I'm trying to figure out what living actually looks like when it's not just optimizing and achieving and climbing the next ladder. She met his eyes. You and Mia are teaching me that, probably faster than I'm comfortable with. Is that good or bad? Terrifying, but good. They ate and talked and laughed, and Serena felt herself relaxing in ways she rarely did. No performance required, no image to maintain, just conversation with someone who seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts rather than what she could do for them. Your turn, she said eventually. Ask me something real, something you've been wondering about. Caleb considered this, his expression turning serious. Okay, real question. Where do you see this going? Us, I mean. Because I need to know if I'm setting Mia up for heartbreak. She's already attached to you, and if this is just a temporary thing while you figure out what you want from life, I need to know now. The question was fair but hard. Serena took a breath, choosing her words carefully. I don't know exactly where this is going. I've never done this before. Dated someone, built something with another person, tried to merge my life with anyone else's. But I know I want to try. I know that what I feel for you is real, and what I feel for Mia is real. And I'm not looking for temporary. I'm looking for... She stopped, surprised by the truth of what she was about to say. I'm looking for family, for people who choose me not because of what I've achieved, but because of who I am. And I think maybe you and Mia could be that, if you'll let me try to be that for you too. Caleb's expression softened, but worry still lingered in his eyes. That's a beautiful answer. But Serena, I need you to understand what you're signing up for. Single dad life isn't glamorous. It's exhausting and complicated and full of moments where everything goes wrong at once. It's Mia getting sick the night before I have a double shift. It's school plays and homework battles and birthday parties with too many children and not enough supervision. It's a life that doesn't leave much room for the kind of luxury you're used to. I don't want luxury, Serena said quietly. I want real. I want messy and complicated and someone who needs me to show up not because I'm useful, but because I'm me. I've had luxury. It's empty. Okay. Caleb reached across the table and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm against hers. Then let's try. But we go slow for Mia's sake, and we're honest when things are hard. And if at any point this stops working, we're brave enough to say so before anyone gets hurt worse than necessary. Deal. They finished dinner and walked out into the November night. The temperature had dropped since afternoon, cold enough to see their breath, but not quite cold enough for snow. The street was busy with Wednesday evening traffic, people heading to bars or shows or home after long days. I should get back, Caleb said reluctantly. The sitter can only stay until 10 and I'm already cutting it close. I'll get you a car, Serena offered, pulling out her phone. Serena, it's late and cold and the subway is going to take forever. Please, let me do this one thing without it being weird. Caleb looked like he wanted to argue but was too tired to mount a convincing protest. Okay. Thank you. They waited together on the corner, and in those few minutes before the car arrived, Caleb pulled her close. Not quite a kiss, not yet, but an embrace that felt like a promise. Serena buried her face in his shoulder and breathed in the smell of him, soap and coffee, and something essentially Caleb underneath it all. This is real, he said quietly into her hair. Whatever happens next, I want you to know that what I feel for you is real. I know, Serena whispered back. I feel it too. The car pulled up and they separated reluctantly. Serena watched until the taillights disappeared into traffic, then started walking toward the subway. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Caleb. Made it 3 blocks before Mia texted asking how the date went. She's demanding a full report. Send help. Serena laughed and typed back, "Oh, tell her it went really well. Tell her I can't wait for Sunday. Tell her..." She paused, then finished the thought. Tell her I'm falling in love with her dad. She sent the message before she could second guess it, then spent the entire subway ride home in a state of panicked euphoria. Too soon. Way too soon. They'd known each other barely a month, but the words had been true when she'd typed them, and pretending otherwise felt like the kind of self-protective lying she was trying to leave behind. His response came as she was unlocking her apartment door. She says that's good because she was worried you didn't like us enough. Also, she's making you a special drawing to celebrate. And Serena, I'm falling for you too. Have been since you let a stranger sew your dress in a closet. Sleep well. Serena stood in her entryway, in her apartment that was slowly becoming less empty, with Mia's drawings on the walls and plants arriving daily and blankets still arranged by the window, and felt something she hadn't experienced in longer than she could remember. Not happiness exactly, though there was that. Not contentment, though that too. What she felt was hope. The bone-deep certainty that she was building towards something good instead of just running away from something bad. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful integration. Wednesday dinners became a regular thing. Sunday park visits expanded to include museums and ice skating, and once, memorably, a disastrous attempt at making cookies in Serena's pristine kitchen that resulted in flour everywhere, and smoke alarms shrieking and Mia declaring it the best day ever. Serena met Caleb's small circle of friends, other service industry workers with kids and complicated lives and a mutual support system built from necessity. They were welcoming but cautious, clearly protective of Caleb and suspicious of this wealthy woman who'd suddenly appeared in his life. She couldn't blame them. She'd be suspicious too. She tried to introduce Caleb to her world once, brought him as her +1 to a company holiday party, and it was a disaster. Her colleagues didn't know what to make of him, their questions dripping with condescension disguised as interest. Caleb held his own with impressive grace, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he retreated into himself when people asked what he did for work. "I'm sorry," she said afterward in the car, taking them home. "That was awful." "It's fine. I knew what I was signing up for." "It's not fine. They were rude." They were curious about why their CEO is dating the help. His voice was matter-of-fact rather than bitter, which somehow made it worse. "Can't really blame them." "I can absolutely blame them," Serena said fiercely. "And I will. That kind of classist nonsense is exactly what I hate about that world." "Then why do you stay in it?" The question stopped her cold. Why did she stay? Because it was what she'd built? Because walking away felt like admitting failure? Because she didn't know who she was without the title and the company and the constant striving? "I don't know," she admitted. "But I'm starting to think maybe I shouldn't." That conversation stayed with her through December's increasing cold and holiday chaos. She found herself questioning everything. The late nights at the office that took her away from Caleb and Mia, the business trips that felt less important than they once had, the constant pressure to grow and scale and achieve more when she already had more than she'd ever dreamed of. 3 days before Christmas, Mia asked Serena to help her pick out a present for Caleb. They spent an afternoon wandering through stores, Mia's small hand in Serena's, discussing the relative merits of various gifts that cost less than $10, because that was Mia's budget from saved allowance and occasional tooth fairy visits. "What about this?" Mia held up a coffee mug that said "World's okayest Dad." "I think he'd love that," Serena said honestly. "But is it special enough? Christmas presents are supposed to be special." The best presents aren't about how much they cost. They're about showing someone you know them and you pay attention to what matters to them. Serena crouched down to Mia's eye level. "Your dad loves coffee, he loves humor, and he loves that you're thoughtful enough to save your money to buy him something. That mug is perfect." Mia's face brightened. "Okay, I'll get it. And I'm going to draw him a card with both of us in it, me and you and him. Like a family." The word hit Serena in the chest. Family. When had that happened? When had this gone from casual Sundays to something that looked and felt and operated like family? "I'd like that," Serena said softly. "I'd like to be in your family drawing." They bought the mug and hot chocolate on the way home, and Mia chattered about Christmas plans, how she and Caleb always made pancakes for breakfast and watched movies in their pajamas, and didn't do anything fancy because fancy wasn't the point. The point was being together. That evening, after Serena had delivered Mia back to Caleb's apartment building and was heading home, she got a call from her executive team. Crisis mode. A major client was threatening to walk, taking millions in annual revenue with them. They needed her input immediately. They needed a meeting tonight. Serena stood on the subway platform and felt the familiar pull of work, of responsibility, of the life she'd built that depended on her constant attention. Then she thought about pancakes and movies and Mia's drawing that would include all three of them like a family. She typed out a message to her team. Handle it without me. That's what I pay you for. If you can't solve it, we'll regroup after the holidays. Then she turned off her phone entirely and headed back to Caleb's neighborhood. She texted him from a bodega where she was buying ingredients. Can I come over? I want to try making dinner with you and Mia. Real dinner, from scratch. I'll probably burn things, but I want to try. His response was immediate. Door's always open. Mia just asked if you were coming back. She'll be thrilled. Fair warning, our place is tiny and messy and nothing like yours. Perfect. See you in 20. Caleb's apartment was indeed tiny, a one-bedroom in an older building where he'd given Mia the bedroom and slept on a pull-out couch in the living room. But it was warm and lived in, with Mia's artwork covering every available wall space and photographs documenting her journey from infant to 7-year-old. It smelled like home in ways Serena's expensive apartment never had, lived in and loved in and fully inhabited by people who made it their own. Mia greeted her arrival with a tackle hug that nearly knocked her over. You came back. Are you staying for dinner? Are we cooking? Can I help? Yes to all of those, Serena said, laughing. I bought ingredients for spaghetti. I figured that was hard to mess up. Oh, you'd be surprised, Caleb said with amusement, but I appreciate the optimism. Well, they cooked together in Caleb's postage-stamp kitchen, Mia on a step stool helping stir sauce, Caleb handling the pasta, Serena chopping vegetables with the focused intensity of someone who didn't cook often and wanted desperately not to fail. They bumped into each other constantly, laughed at mistakes, and somehow produced a meal that was actually edible. Sitting around Caleb's small table, eating spaghetti off mismatched plates while Mia narrated the entire plot of her current favorite movie, Serena felt something click into place. This was it. This was what she'd been searching for without knowing it. Not perfection, not luxury, not achievement. Just this. Just people choosing each other, showing up for each other, building something together from ordinary moments and genuine connection. I have to tell you something, she said after dinner, after Mia had been convinced to get ready for bed and was brushing her teeth in the bathroom. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I need to say it out loud before I lose my nerve. Caleb's expression turned wary. That's usually how breakup speeches start. Not a breakup speech, promise. Serena took a breath. I'm going to step back from my company. Not quit entirely, but transition to a board role instead of CEO. Hand over the day-to-day operations to my executive team and just be involved in big-picture decisions. Caleb stared at her. That's huge. Are you sure? I'm sure. I've spent 10 years building something I'm proud of, but somewhere along the way I forgot that companies are supposed to serve your life, not be your life. And I want a life. I want time for Wednesday dinners and Sunday adventures and helping with homework. I want to be present for the people I care about instead of always being on my phone managing the next crisis. Serena, you can't make that decision because of me, because of us. That's too much pressure, and if things don't work out, I'm not making it because of you, she interrupted gently. I'm making it because of me, because I finally figured out what I actually want. And it's not more success or more money or more of anything I already have. It's this. It's people who see me as more than my achievements. It's being part of something that matters in ways quarterly reports don't measure. Caleb was quiet for a long moment, his expression complex. That's terrifying and brave, and I don't know what to say except, don't do it unless you're certain. Don't blow up your life for a relationship that's barely 2 months old. It's not for the relationship, Serena insisted. It's for me. The relationship just helped me see what I was missing. She reached across the small couch that separated them and took his hand. But I won't lie. Knowing I could have more time with you and Mia definitely makes the decision easier. Daddy? Mia appeared in the doorway in unicorn pajamas, holding Mr. Peanuts. Can Serena read me a story? Please? Caleb looked at Serena, a question in his eyes. She nodded. Go ahead, he said. I'll clean up the kitchen. Serena followed Mia into her small bedroom, walls covered in drawings and glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling and every surface cluttered with the treasures of childhood.
Mia climbed into bed and patted the space next to her. "This one," she said, handing Serena a well-worn picture book about a girl who befriended a dragon. Serena read slowly, tripping over some of the rhythm, but getting better as she went. Mia leaned against her side, warm and sleepy, occasionally interjecting commentary about the illustrations. When the story ended, Mia didn't let her go. "Serena?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "Are you going to stay? Like, forever stay?" Serena struggled to answer honestly without making promises she couldn't guarantee.
"I'm going to try very hard to stay. Your dad and I are figuring things out, but I care about you so much, both of you." "Good. Because I love you." Mia said it simply, the way children do, without self-consciousness or fear of rejection. "And I want you to be part of our family. Is that okay?" Serena's throat closed up. "Yeah, sweetie, that's okay. That's more than okay. You can love someone even if they're not married to your dad, right? Like, love doesn't need paperwork?" Despite the tears threatening, Serena smiled. "No, love definitely doesn't need paperwork. Where did you learn about paperwork?" "School. We talked about families and how they come in all shapes. I told everyone my family is me and Daddy, and now you too, even though you don't live with us yet. My teacher said that's a valid family configuration." Mia yawned hugely. "I think you should move in. Then we could have breakfast together every day." "That's a big step," Serena said carefully. "But I appreciate this invitation." "Think about it," Mia mumbled, her eyes already closing. "We have room, sort of. Maybe." Serena sat with her until her breathing evened out into sleep, then carefully extracted herself and returned to the living room. Caleb had finished the dishes and was sitting on the couch looking exhausted and thoughtful. "She invited me to move in," Serena said, sitting down next to him. Very casually, like she was suggesting a play date. "That's Mia. No concept of conventional timelines." Caleb smiled slightly. "For the record, I wouldn't say no to that idea. Eventually, when we're ready." "Yeah? Yeah. This apartment is too small for all three of us, and your apartment is big enough but completely lacking in cozy. Maybe we could find something in between. Someday. When this stops feeling quite so terrifying." "I like the sound of someday," Serena said softly. They sat together in comfortable silence, Caleb's arm around her shoulders, the small apartment quiet except for the ambient noise of the building and the city beyond. Serena thought about the distance she'd traveled from that gala night, from the woman whose dress had ripped to the woman sitting in a tiny apartment feeling more at home than she'd ever felt in her Tribeca high-rise. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For fixing my dress. For answering my coffee invitation. For letting me into your Sundays and your life and your daughter's heart. For showing me what I was missing." "You did that yourself," Caleb said. "You just needed someone to point out the door. You're the one who walked through it." Christmas came 2 days later, and Serena spent it exactly as Mia had described. Pancakes for breakfast, movies in pajamas, and absolutely nothing fancy. She gave Mia art supplies and books, and a stuffed elephant named Mrs. Peanuts to keep Mr. Peanuts company. She gave Caleb a new chef's knife because his current one was held together with electrical tape and hope, and a framed photograph she'd taken of him and Mia at the park, both of them caught mid-laugh, backlit by autumn sun. They gave her a bracelet Mia had made from colorful beads, each one apparently representing something important: blue for loyalty, green for growth, yellow for happiness, red for love. And Caleb gave her a small box that contained not jewelry or anything expensive, but his apartment key. "In case you want to stop by," he said, watching her reaction carefully. "In case you want somewhere to go that isn't just yours. In case you want to keep building toward that someday we talked about." Serena held the key like it was made of something precious, which, in all the ways that mattered, it was. 3 months later, on a Sunday afternoon in early spring when the park was exploding with cherry blossoms and new life, Caleb asked Serena to marry him. Not with a ring or a grand gesture or anything that resembled the proposals she'd occasionally imagined in her most private moments. He asked while they were sitting on their usual blanket, Mia building fairy houses out of sticks and flowers a few feet away, the question tumbling out like he'd been holding it too long and finally had to let it free. "Marry me. Not now. I need to save up for a ring and do this properly. But someday, when we're ready, say you'll marry me and we'll figure out the rest as we go." Serena looked at him, at this man who'd stepped into a hallway with a sewing kit and changed everything, who'd shown her that success was less about what you achieved and more about who you showed up for, who'd given her a place in his life and his heart and his daughter's world without asking for anything except her honest presence. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes to someday. Yes to figuring it out as we go. Yes to all of it." Mia, who'd apparently been eavesdropping despite her apparent focus on fairy architecture, came running over and threw herself into both their laps. "Are we getting married? All three of us? Can I wear a sparkly dress? Can we have cake?" "Yes to all of those," Caleb said, laughing as he wrapped his arms around both of them. "Especially the cake." They picked a date 6 months out, enough time to plan, but not so far that the waiting felt endless. They kept it simple because simple was what they were building. A ceremony in the same park where they'd spent so many Sundays, with Mia as both flower girl and junior officiant because she'd insisted on having an important job, followed by a reception at a community center decorated with Mia's artwork and string lights, and all the cozy their combined efforts could muster. Serena's business colleagues came, awkward in their casual wear and uncertain how to relate to Caleb's friends from the service industry. Caleb's small circle showed up in their best clothes, bringing covered dishes and genuine joy. Mia ran between groups like a tiny ambassador, forcing connections through sheer enthusiastic willpower. The ceremony itself was brief and honest. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, Caleb promising to keep sewing her torn places back together, Serena promising to keep showing up even when things got messy, both of them promising Mia that they were a family now, official and forever. When they kissed, Mia cheered so loudly that several people jumped, and when they walked back down the makeshift aisle with Mia between them, each holding one of her hands, Serena felt the same thing she'd felt that first Sunday in the park, this bone-deep rightness that couldn't be quantified or optimized or measured against any success metric except the one that mattered most. The reception was chaos in the best possible way. Too many people in too small a space, music someone had curated from a playlist that lurched between genres, speeches that ranged from heartfelt to hilariously embarrassing. At some point, Serena found herself dancing with Caleb while Mia executed dramatic spins nearby, her sparkly dress catching the lights. "No regrets?" Caleb asked, pulling her close. "Not a single one," Serena said honestly. "You? Are you kidding? I married a billionaire who thinks my burned pancakes are gourmet cuisine. I'm living the dream." "Former billionaire," Serena corrected. "Current board member and aspiring full-time stepmom who's still not sure how to braid hair but is willing to learn." "That's very specific." "Mia made me promise to learn hair braiding. Something about friendship bracelets being step 1 and complex braiding being the advanced course." Serena rested her head against his shoulder. "I have no idea what I'm doing. Being a wife, being a parent figure, building a life that's about more than just work. I'm making it up as I go." "That's what everyone does," Caleb said gently. "We're all just making it up and hoping we get more right than wrong. But you know what? You're doing great. Mia loves you, I love you, and every day you show up and try. That's all any of us can do." Mia crashed into them, demanding they both spin her at the same time. They obliged, lifting her between them until she was airborne and giggling, her sparkly dress a blur of sequins and joy. Later, much later, when the reception had wound down and they'd changed out of their wedding clothes into something more comfortable, the three of them returned to the park. Not for any particular reason except that it felt right to end the day where so much had begun, to sit on their blanket one more time as an official family. "This is where you guys had your first date," Mia said, sprawling across both their laps. "Right here. And you watched me on the swings and you made Daddy smile and you were sad because your apartment was too big and lonely." "That's right," Serena confirmed. "How do you remember all that? You were 7. "I'm 8 now," Mia said with great dignity. "And I remember because it's important. That's when you became part of us. That's when everything got better." Caleb met Serena's eyes over Mia's head, his expression soft with love and gratitude and bone-deep contentment. Serena smiled back, thinking about the journey from that gala night to this moment, about torn dresses and quiet repairs, about Sunday afternoons and Wednesday dinners, about learning to measure success not in dollars or deals, but in shared moments and genuine connection. Can we come back here every Sunday? Mia asked. Even now that you live with us? Even now that we're married and everything? Even now, Serena promised. This is our spot. We can come back whenever we want. Good, because this is where magic things happen. Mia yawned hugely. Like in my dreams. Remember, Daddy? When I said magic things are better than real things, but this is both. This is magic and real at the same time. Yeah, Bug, Caleb said softly. It really is. They sat together as the sun set over the Hudson, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Around them, the park began its transition from day to evening, joggers heading home, dog walkers making their final rounds, the city preparing for another night of endless motion and possibility. But in their small circle, husband, wife, daughter, family, time seemed to slow. This moment, this perfect, ordinary, extraordinary moment, stretched out like it could last forever if they wanted it to. Serena looked at the two people who'd changed everything, who'd shown her that the most valuable things couldn't be bought or built or achieved through sheer force of will. They could only be found by being brave enough to let someone see your torn places, by showing up even when it was terrifying, by choosing connection over control and trust over self-protection. A torn dress and a quiet repair. That's how it had started. One moment of vulnerability meeting one moment of uncomplicated kindness. And from that small beginning, they'd stitched together something beautiful. Not perfect. There would be challenges ahead, moments of doubt, the ongoing work of blending different worlds and different expectations. But real, honest, built on a foundation of genuine care rather than strategic positioning. Mia fell asleep between them as the stars began to emerge, her small body warm and trusting. Caleb carefully lifted her, and Serena gathered their things, and together they made their way home. Not to her old lonely apartment or his cramped one-bedroom, but to the space they'd found together. A two-bedroom in a neighborhood halfway between their old lives, with room for Mia's art projects and Caleb's kitchen experiments and Serena's growing collection of cozy additions. Home. After years of not really having one, she finally had a place that felt like more than just shelter. She had people who wanted her there, not for what she could provide, but for who she was. She had a 7-year-old who'd decided she was family before Serena had even realized she was looking for one. She had a husband who'd seen her at her most vulnerable and responded with kindness instead of judgment. And most importantly, she had stitches, small, careful repairs that held together the torn places. They weren't invisible. If you looked closely, you could see where the damage had been mended, where life had ripped and been sewn back together stronger than before. But that was okay. Better than okay, maybe. Because the stitches told a story of survival and repair, of falling apart and being helped back together, of vulnerability, meeting competence, and creating something new. As they settled into their home, Mia tucked into bed clutching both Mr. and Mrs. Peanuts, Caleb making tea in their kitchen, Serena looking at the drawings and photographs and accumulated evidence of actual living that covered every surface. She felt a completeness she'd never experienced in all her years of achievement. Success, she'd learned, wasn't about the size of your apartment or your company's valuation or your appearance on Forbes lists. Success was this: coming home to people who loved you, sharing meals around a table too small for grand dinner parties but perfect for family dinners, falling asleep next to someone who knew your history and chose you anyway. Success was stitches that held, repairs that lasted, love that didn't require perfection, only presence. And as Serena climbed into bed next to Caleb, as he pulled her close and whispered goodnight into her hair, as she drifted towards sleep in this home they'd built together, she thought about that gala night one more time, about standing in a hallway with a torn dress and a racing heart, certain that her worst nightmare had come true. She'd been so wrong. Her worst nightmare would have been never tearing that dress at all, never meeting Caleb in that hallway, never being forced to accept help from a stranger with tired eyes and a sewing kit, never discovering that the life she'd built, impressive as it was, had been missing the only things that actually mattered. The torn dress had been the best thing that ever happened to her. And the quiet repair? That had been everything.